Unwilling to remain a slave for life, I set my sights on Yun Jian, the young son of a wealthy local gentleman. Through countless schemes and every means at my disposal, I entered the Yun household as his attendant, deceiving his true heart, taking his money, and coaxing him into supporting my journey to the capital for the imperial examinations to become an official. I, Jiang Rui, swear to heaven that in the future, as a female chancellor or minister, I will personally request His Majesty to bestow marriage upon us. Later, amid the ups and downs of officialdom, I rose swiftly through the ranks. How could I still remember a mere son of a wealthy gentleman? When the seventh prince played chess with me, he asked both openly and subtly whether I was betrothed. The chief censor, whom I had surpassed in every matter, learned of this and, after court, grabbed my official robe and refused to let go. Gnashing his teeth, he said, "In my Shin family, men and women marry only as the primary spouse, nothing less." Amidst the chaos, when His Majesty summoned me to an audience, beside him stood a familiar figure. "My dear minister, the Empress's nephew is suing you for abandoning your husband and breaking your promise." The first time I saw Yun Jian, my parents were chasing me with rattan sticks, shouting, "You little wretch, I've raised you for so many years for nothing. If you don't sell me off, where would our family get the money to marry off your brother?" I managed to run a short distance, but my mother grabbed me by the hair and dragged me back to the street corner. She seized my shoulders and pressed me to the ground, while my father ruthlessly whipped me with a rattan cane until my skin split and my flesh bled. My face was pressed against the sharp gravel, leaving scratches. The excruciating pain nearly made me roll my eyes and pass out. The despair of being unable to move reminded me of the day my parents heartlessly forced me to drop out of school. Father had injured his leg while working, and our family had no money to survive. They chose to make me, the yearly top scholar of the academy, quit school, yet repeatedly urged my illiterate elder brother never to stop his studies. Because in Great Jin, where literature is revered, if a man drops out of school midway, it would harm his chances of finding a wife in the future. I knelt before my father, tearfully pleading that I could work even harder, copy books after school to earn money. Previously, I could copy half a book a day, but I could push myself to copy a whole book daily. Women in Great Jin could also become officials. If I passed the imperial exams and became a jinsher, my parents wouldn't have to suffer so much. My father slapped me so hard that my head turned sideways. "You don't have that fate," he said. I knelt all night in the heavy snow. The next day, as my elder brother headed to the academy with his books, he kicked me mockingly and sneered, "It's because of this ridiculous rule allowing both men and women to take the imperial exams that women like you are getting more and more restless in the Great Jin dynasty." The moment he kicked me into the snow, I heard mother say lovingly, "Watch your step, don't slip." Now that my brother is of age, but still unmarried, father and mother have grown anxious again, planning to sell me as a servant to a wealthy family to get money. I didn't know which blow hit my lip, but in an instant, flesh and blood were torn, and blood splattered onto my cheek. The sharp pain jolted me awake for a moment, but the next second, father's stick didn't fall again. A sturdy servant stopped him, saying, "My master is passing by and can't bear to see this filth." In the numbness of pain, I looked over. A luxurious and elegant carriage approached from not far away, and the wind lifted its curtain. The first thing that caught my eye was a lotus-adorned jade chain entwined in ink-black hair, pure and cold, with a lustrous jade hue. Having once worked as a clerk in a jewelry shop on West Street, I knew that even the accessories of noble ladies and young masters rarely boasted such exquisite craftsmanship. As I drew closer, I finally saw the face of the person in the sedan chair, long eyebrows sharp and cold, pale eyes desolate and icy. Despite his elaborate adornments, they paled in comparison to his striking features. His servant's warning came too late. My father couldn't retract his rod in time, and a splash of blood from my back landed on the corner of the sedan curtain. The man frowned and looked over, his gaze resting on me for a moment. The ethereal beauty of a moonlit reflection and the cold stillness of icy snow merged in that single glance. Would he intervene? I held my breath, but then I saw his lips move. "Filthy." The servant broke out in a cold sweat from fright. The servant hastily tore off the soiled sedan curtain and threw it on the ground like trash. My parents, fearing they'd have to pay compensation, immediately knelt and begged for mercy. After the carriage had driven far away, my father angrily kicked me twice, his rattan cane striking even harder. "I'll beat you to death, you restless burden." I curled up, my ears faintly filled with the murmurs of passers-by. I heard that person is even a close relative of the neighboring prefect. So, why did he move to Chongling? This I know. It's said that the young master has had headaches since childhood and heard that Chongling has ancient herbal remedies. Before I knew it, father finally tired of beating me and let mother help him walk home, leaving me lying at the street corner like a dead dog. The setting sun shone over me. I stirred slightly, and in my numbness, I reached out and grasped a pebble that had just been run over by the carriage, holding it tightly in my palm. I will not be a slave, nor will I live a humble life, as anyone wishes. The peace talisman from Chongling's Yunding Temple is very efficacious. Even high-ranking officials travel thousands of miles to seek a fortune slip, not to mention people passing by and staying temporarily. I lay among the prickly bushes on the mountainside, holding my breath and waiting. Soon, an elegant carriage passed by. I silently blew the powder from my hand through a bamboo tube. At that moment, the wind helped me blow most of the colorless powder into the lifted curtain of the carriage. The driver sneezed and looked around warily, so I pressed myself even lower. In an instant, the people inside the carriage grew restless. Upon hearing the commotion, the servants and maids accompanying the carriage hastily retreated more than 100 feet away. The pained groans and sounds of something being torn or snapped inside were truly agonizing. Unfortunately, the medicine they had brought was useless. How could it be effective? Chongling was known for producing herbs that cured headaches, but naturally, it also yielded roots that induced and aggravated them. Until a hand reached out from the curtain and gripped the carriage edge. The nails, once like white jade crescent moons, dripped with vivid red blood, staining his spotless robes. Only then did I stoop and crawl deep into the bushes, circle halfway, and, carrying the hidden medicine basket on my back, hasten forward. I asked with concern, "What's wrong, miss? Are you a local herb gatherer from Chongling?" My master's headache suddenly flared up. When the headache struck, Yun Jian was like a frenzied beast, his well-kept ink-black hair torn loose from its hair clasp and scattered wildly. The tea table and cups inside the carriage were crushed to pieces by his own hands. His eyes were like the deepest ink in an inkstone, as if they could shred and tear apart everything they took in. I braced myself and lifted the curtain, intending to catch him off guard, but even under the influence of the medicine, he was still agile enough to disarm me first, dislocating my arm. Enduring the sharp pain, I pressed the handkerchief coated with herbal juice over his mouth and nose. Taking advantage of everyone's distraction, I moved my hand half an inch higher, pressing my wrist against his lips. Driven by instinct, he sought the healing scent of the medicine and bit into my wrist. The antidote I had smeared on my wrist earlier flowed into his mouth along with the blood. When everything calmed down, I sat to the side, clutching my wrist, my expression restrained. Yun Jian wiped the blood from his lips, lifted his eyes, and looked at me. There was a long silence. A chill crept up my spine, and I almost thought he had seen through my scheme. Yet he let out a chuckle, picking up the ear chains scattered on the ground, strands of silver lotuses wrapped around his blood-stained fingers. "What do you want, my savior?" he asked. Yun Jian took action, buying back my indenture contract from the slave trader, and I managed to find a job in Yun Mansion, not registered as a slave. Free to myself, yet far from what I had previously planned. Yun Jian, not the warm-hearted sort who would show gratitude for saving a life. He treated me almost with disdain, paying me even less than the lowest servants in the mansion. Outside Yun Mansion, my parents kept sending letters, stopping me during my errands, either threatening me or shedding tears to gain sympathy. Yun Jian saved me but had no intention of helping me. The maids in his mansion were very hostile toward this outsider. One day, when I was handing over meals to the head maid in his courtyard, she curled her lips, ready to trip me up and make me drop the dishes. Having honed the skill of reading expressions and sensing movements under my father's beatings, I pushed the dishes back to her with a firm hand. Sure enough, caught off guard, she instinctively splashed the dishes at me. The glass bowl shattered on the ground. I trembled as I called out, "Elder sister, please don't pour it on me," and hurriedly knelt on the broken shards, blood seeping from my knees. The senior maid, unable to defend herself, timidly glanced toward Yun Jian, who was sitting in the courtyard reading a picture book. He must have seen everything. How she poured it on me. Yet Yun Jian lazily lifted his eyes to sweep over my bloodstained knees and panicked face. I clearly saw the disgust rising in his gaze. You only have this much ability, yet you insist on entering my household. He didn't punish his maid. After Yun Jian left, I remained kneeling in the same spot, my knees aching with a chilling pain, but my mind had never been clearer. Yun Jian was no ordinary man. He was too clever, seeing through all my tricks and schemes. He had no patience for scheming. I lowered my eyes, ignoring the maid's jeers beside me, and began to work dutifully. From that day on, as if my bubble of illusions had been burst, I focused on being a proper maid, working hard, no longer responding to others' provocations or mockery. Whenever I saw Yun Jian, I always lowered my head respectfully. Because of this, I earned the steward's favor and was assigned to the kitchen to oversee Yun Jian's meals. I went out of my way to prepare all kinds of dishes and desserts for him, northern and southern styles, eastern and western varieties, never repeating within 3 months. I even visited the bookshop daily to borrow ancient texts, fusing their knowledge to recreate new recipes. The leftovers from Yun Jian's meals grew smaller each day, yet I wasn't eager to appear and claim credit. Occasionally, when a maid or servant was punished, I would cook some extra sweet soup and have them bring it to Yun Jian, seizing the chance to plead for leniency. My reputation in the mansion grew increasingly favorable. During these nights, to save on lamp oil, I would study the next day's recipes in the kitchen while using spare moments to review my books. After using up half a sack of flour, I finally managed to make a cold cake with excellent texture. I was squatting by the stove, reading a book and eating the cold cake by the flickering firelight. Lost in reciting the text, I was almost entranced until a chilly voice rang out from above. "What are you doing?" I jolted awake, scrambled to my feet, and swallowed the cold cake in my mouth in a single gulp. Standing before me was Yun Jian. His moon-white robe seemed like a handful of mist he'd scooped up. Perhaps because of the candlelight, he no longer appeared so cold and distant, but instead radiated a warmth that felt almost tangible. He paid no mind to my books scattered all over the floor, casually picking up a piece of chilled cake. "This evening, you were one bowl of sweet soup short," he said. "So, I'm hungry." I scratched my head, my voice weak. Today I went to the east of the city to deliver a sack of flour, and by the time I got back, it was already dinner time. "Why deliver flour? Your current monthly allowance isn't enough for me to buy books," Yun Jian said slowly, eating the chilled cake with the utmost elegance. Yet in an instant, only the garnish of mint leaves remained in the dish. "Starting next month, your allowance will be raised to 1 tael," he said flatly. Just as he was leaving, he seemed to think of something. He stopped at the threshold. "For tomorrow's midday snack, I want ice cream." I set down the empty plate and asked with concern, "Young master, are you full?" The banished immortal's receding figure gave a strange little pause. "Mind your own business." His tone wasn't particularly harsh, but it came 7/10 faster than usual, as if he was a bit embarrassed at being caught out. When all was quiet, I washed the plates, picked up the books scattered on the floor, carefully wiped them clean, and thought, the plan had succeeded. As I fell asleep that night, I recalled the last words spoken by the only female teacher at the academy before her family took her away. At that moment, she held my hand and said, "Zhang Rui, no matter what, make sure you get out first." Yes, no matter what, by any means necessary, even if it means resorting to every trick in the book. Some people are born destined to fight and snatch in order to survive and thrive. In the days that followed, I continued to behave myself and didn't come anywhere near Yun Jian's courtyard. However, Yun Jian's servant kept sending messages. "The young master prefers sweets today. A young master prefers light flavors today. Young master?" Before I knew it, the Lantern Festival arrived. According to the steward, Yun Jian didn't really enjoy such lively festivals, but his mother had specially come to spend it with him, accompanied by a strikingly beautiful young woman. After much pleading, the woman also stood by his side, smiling shyly at him. Yun Jian rested his chin on his hand, leisurely placing a stone on the go board without even blinking. "Not going." Of course, after his mother's crying, tantrums, and threats of suicide, Yun Jian finally agreed to go. But he went in grand style, taking nearly half the household with him. I ambled along behind them, buying a roasted sweet potato to eat. Yun's mother was so angry she beat her chest. The clear and beautiful woman stepped out to mediate, saying, Ajian has been shy since childhood, so this is normal. Yun Jian lifted his eyes slightly, but said nothing. Still, the festive season and beautiful scenery shouldn't be wasted, Ajian. The Lantern Festival is rare. Have you taken a fancy to any Lantern Riddle Prize? I'll win it for you, she said, poised and confident, her words revealing familiarity with Yun Jian. Yun Jian raised an eyebrow, turned around and pointed, saying, Then I'll take that one. Following the direction of his finger, under 100 brilliant lanterns, an exquisitely crafted fish lantern hung in the very center of the stage. That is this year's prize for the Lantern Riddle King. The woman smiled sweetly and said, Good. She moved among the stalls, answering all kinds of lantern riddles fluently. But Yun Jian seemed unconcerned. He found a private room and ordered a bowl of wonton to eat. His light brown eyes glanced down at the flickering lights below. After a long time, most of the lantern riddles at the stalls had been guessed. That woman was very skilled. She obtained 120 colored tokens. But a refined man got 122, so she was a bit discouraged. Ajian, that square lantern next to you, is also very beautiful. Yun Jian tapped the table edge with his knuckles, a lazy smile curling at the corners of his mouth, but his eyes were shallow and cold. You mean I should settle for that? The woman choked. Yes, this precious young master has always wanted only the best. Even back then, when he was raised under that person's care, he was the sole favorite. Treasures and fine jade were like worn-out shoes to him. Just as everyone assumed that man would take the top prize, a figure in shabby clothes, clutching a full armful of colorful slips, pushed through the crowd and struggled to climb onto the arena platform. Hold on, brother, 150 slips. Exclamations of surprise rang out from the crowd below. I took the exquisite fish-shaped lantern and turned, only to meet Yun Jian's gaze from the pavilion upstairs. He was lounging lazily against the edge of his chair, today wearing a snake-shaped earring chain, his ink-black hair cascading down, the silver gleaming brighter than moonlight. Yun Jian looked this way, a light layer of weariness and understanding in his eyes. The steward, too, stared eagerly at the fish lantern in my hands. Everyone believed I had guessed the lantern riddles for Yun Jian's sake. Miss, there's also the prize money of 50 taels of silver. Shall I send it to your residence, or? Upon hearing this, I immediately set the fish lamp aside against a pillar, leaned against it, and opened the large pocket attached to my waist, beaming with joy. Right here, I said. The shopkeeper was taken aback. This is a pouch I specially sewed for the prize money, I explained cheerfully. I had walked quite a distance before someone reminded me I'd forgotten the fish lamp, so I hurried back to retrieve it. On the way back, I sat happily in the carriage, laughing the whole way. The steward pulled me aside and said, Xiao Jiang, who would have guessed you had so much learning in that head of yours? The young master will surely be delighted with this fish lamp. I was taken aback and scratched my head. Does the young master want this lamp? I asked. What? Did you not enter the lantern riddles for the young master? I honestly shook my head, but generously offered. Since the young master likes it, I'll send it to his courtyard later. After all, this lamp is nice to look at, but not much use. From the carriage beside me, there came a sudden soft sound, as if a teacup had been set down heavily on the table. That night, carrying the shimmering fish lamp, I crossed the courtyard and arrived at Yun Jian's residence. He sat alone at the stone table, writing something. I couldn't make it out as the wind ruffled the paper. Young master, this is a fish lantern I won on a whim today. I heard you liked them, so I came specially to offer it to you. Yun Jian stopped his brush and turned his head to look at me, a flicker of sharpness and malice passing through his eyes like a faint crack on fine porcelain. This young master does not accept things won on a whim. I let out a dejected, "Oh," picked up the fish lantern, and turned to leave. But behind me, I seemed to hear a faint, incredulous sneer, no call to stop me. Dumb enough to be sold at a pork stall. Yun Jian gave an angry laugh, feeling more irritated than he had in ages. This woman. At first, he thought she was calculating and eager to please, but it turned out she was just a blockhead with occasional moments of sense. He didn't actually care much about her, nor did he truly like that fish lantern. But tonight, for no reason, he felt as if he'd been dragged into some game, leaving a pent-up fire of frustration. Yun Jian chalked it up to not having seen such a fool in years. Just as he was about to heavily scribble a few angry strokes on the big pig's head he'd drawn on the paper, a gust of wind rushed in. He looked up and there she was coming back. Holding the fish lantern that poured out colorful light, the young master ran with a smile. "You really like it, don't you? Here, take it." She thrust the fish lantern forward into his hand, smiling and blinking those big, clear eyes, the only striking feature on her otherwise plain face. "I was wrong just now, so wrong," she said, scratching her head with a hint of embarrassment and too obvious flattery. "Young master, the moment I saw this fish lantern, I felt it suited you, so I tried very hard to guess the riddles." "Idiot." "A sycophant." Yun Jian sneered, about to utter his usual sarcastic barbs. But the flowing light of the fish lantern in his hand suddenly glimmered in the eyes of the person before him, brilliant and dazzling. He abruptly remembered that this same person had worn that very expression while weaving through the crowd, answering lantern riddles with ease. In that daze, a gust of wind blew the rice paper from the table, plastering it onto that person's face, pig face to pig face. Yun Jian found himself wanting to laugh. He peeled off the rice paper and stared at it for a long while, his eyes wide and bright with confusion. "Young master, who did you draw?" Yun Jian casually tucked the paper into his sleeve. "None of your business." With that, he turned and headed back to his room, the silver ornaments and jade pendants on him clinking with each step. A night of lanterns and dragons dancing. A night of 1,000 blooming flowers. I stepped over the scattered papers and returned to my own room, wrapping myself in a thin quilt for warmth. I opened the newly purchased anthology of ancient texts from the bookstore owner, coveted for so long, now bought with a bonus I'd earned. I read through the night. After that day, Yun Jian's attitude toward me shifted subtly. Before, he wouldn't look at me sideways, as if I were a pebble on the road. Now, strangely enough, when he passed by and saw me cut my hand trimming flowers, he would have the steward give me the finest bruise ointment. I was deeply moved. He snorted, "You look hideous with that pained grimace." In winter, as I walked alongside the carriage, my hands and feet grew too cold and numb to move. Out of sheer magnanimity, he would let me sit by the carriage door to warm myself. The carriage door slowly opened wider and wider. Whether from the wind or not, I didn't know, but gradually my whole body grew warmer. After sitting for a while, I shifted to get a better view of the scenery behind the carriage. Yun Jian's clear voice came from behind. "Are you sneaking a peek?" I was startled. I quickly sat up straight and slammed the carriage door shut. "No, nothing. I was just looking at the old man selling roasted sweet potatoes. I didn't even glance at you, young master." A gnashing, cold laugh came from inside the carriage. "Get out." I slunk off the carriage. Luckily, the destination wasn't far off. One day, the steward brought back a silver foal, a gift from an old friend of Yun Jian. The horse had a glossy silver coat, clearly a rare steed. But it was quite spirited. When the stable boy tried to lead it, it nearly kicked him. Whether from the bumpy journey or the touch of an unfamiliar groom, the horse lost its calm, neighing and struggling to break free. The tree it was tied to shook violently under the immense force, its branches rustling. After several such struggles, the trunk finally snapped. The horse charged madly toward the crowd in the courtyard. Amidst the commotion, a young servant girl, unable to dodge in time, was knocked to the ground by the crowd. Just as the horse's hooves were about to trample her chest, a handful of green powder was suddenly thrown from somewhere in the air. The powder blurred the horse's eyes, causing it to pause. The moment the powder entered its nostrils, it even made the horse dazed for an instant. At that very moment, a figure in green flashed out, pulling the servant girl up and retreating to a safe zone. After inhaling the powder, the horse's previously frenzied expression suddenly froze, its hind legs went weak, and it collapsed to the ground. The steward looked somewhat worried. I held the trembling girl with one arm and met his questioning gaze. "Just ordinary calming powder. It will return to normal in 45 minutes. No need to panic. Use this time to tie it up again. Check its horseshoe to see if there's any foreign object embedded in it." Trusting my words, The steward indeed found a small wooden splinter inside the loose horseshoe, apparently driven in during the journey here. It was not sharp, but incredibly hard, slowly and deeply grinding into the flesh. The horse had been enduring the pain, and no one had noticed. Not until they arrived at this place, when the horse reached its limit and a stranger suddenly touched it, did it go mad. Jiang Rui, you are truly amazing. Even knowing that, the steward said with heartfelt admiration. The rescued maid kept holding my arm tightly, tears like crystal pearls clinging to the corners of her eyes. Jiang Rui, you're amazing. Thank goodness for you, she said, looking at me with adoration, as if my face were glowing. A group of people surrounded me, showering me with praise until I felt a little embarrassed. It was just some book knowledge and experience I'd accumulated from washing horses at posting stations to earn a few coins. After finally breaking free from the crowd, I realized that Yun Jian had come back from outside at some point and was just standing at the doorway, looking this way. In his hand, he held a deluxe edition of Yanbei Occasional Notes, now rolled up and pressed against the tip of his nose. His usually cold, pale, and beautiful face revealed only a pair of eyes, their light pupils carrying a hint of daze and contemplation, a gaze stripped of arrogance, like a clear pool beneath pear blossoms. The silver steed, now calm after waking, was unusually close to me, placing its head on my palm when I reached out, ignoring even Yun Jian's hand beside me. He let out a cold laugh. Idiot. I wasted my efforts bringing you back and feeding you well, only for you to turn your back on me the moment you spent half a year at that guy Tao Zhou's place. So, it turns out this has always been Yun Jian's horse. The horse flicked its tail. Though it had no expression, I could see irritation and disdain in its eyes, every move exuding an unbearable pride and arrogance. Indeed, like master, like horse. I thought Yun Jian had left and sighed quietly. What did you say? Came a gritted teeth voice. I froze, not daring to turn my head, and vigorously brushed Shui Yu's coat. White and beautiful, such a good boy. So pretty. I coaxed Shui Yu until it tossed its head and bristled its mane proudly. Suddenly, something like a book page lightly tapped my head. Don't talk nonsense. The voice paused, as if struggling for a moment, then gritted out another sentence. At least speak softly. With that, the person turned and left. On usual days, their silver bells and jade ornaments chimed in a gentle rhythm as they walked slowly, but today the bell sounds were erratic and urgent, without order. What's wrong now? I was completely perplexed. Get out. At night, I brought a plate of green grape jelly to find Yun Jian. Just as I entered the courtyard, I heard the sound of porcelain shattering from his room. Sure enough, his headache had flared up again. The herbs from Chongling could ease his daily attacks, but their effect was too slow. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open anyway. Yun Jian stood amid the fragments of blue-green roux kiln porcelain, still holding a piece of shard in his hand, blood dripping down in drops. His cold, pale eyes looked over at me, as if he was using every ounce of his reason to suppress the surging pain in his mind. Get out. I didn't listen to him. Instead, she opened the tightly shut window lattice, letting the silver-white, jade-like moonlight flood the pitch-black bedchamber. In the bright lamplight, I unfurled the acupuncture kit in front of Yun Jian. When I was young, a reclusive physician once lived for a long time in Chongling Valley. I shamelessly gathered herbs for him and let him test medicines on me in exchange for the chance to learn from him. Back then, I didn't know what use these skills would be. I only knew that the more of such abilities I had, the better for me. Sit over here. Yun Jian frowned, trying his best to stay calm as he shooed me out. Even the physicians of the imperial capital can't cure my headaches. Jiang Rui, get out. I grabbed his outstretched hand and pulled him in front of me. As the silver needles fell in sequence, one after another in order, by the time I applied the last one, most of the frenzy within Yun Jian had subsided. Like a startled, bristling wild beast suddenly fed a piece of fragrant meat, his body softened, but his mouth remained stubborn. Applying needles on me so casually, Jiang Rui, you have quite the nerve. His cold, deliberately arrogant voice came to an abrupt halt. The crescent moon pendant on the young master's ear trembled gently. I wiped his reddened lips with a clean, thick cloth. Open up. His stubborn lips and teeth were pried open. The blood that had been clenched tight finally found an outlet, trickling down the cloth. The horse and its master were truly alike. One endured dull pain without a whimper, only collapsing after reaching its destination. The other, in extreme agony, said nothing and dismissed everyone, locking himself away, venting by smashing lifeless objects, biting his lips and tongue, holding back the taste of blood without revealing a trace. Jiang Rui, Yun Jian lifted his eyes, letting me wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. His pale irises trembled faintly, like a pool of melted moonlight. Pain. Why didn't you say so? I pressed the cloth gently against his cheek to make sure no more blood seeped out before letting go. Yun Jian turned his head slightly, and I lifted his chin gently through the cloth.
I said again.
The man's eyes trembled, dodging like a cornered cat that couldn't bear the teasing, ready to bolt in shame and anger. Jiang Rui, you. Before he could finish, I immediately released him, my gaze simple and concerned. Next time it hurts, you have to say so. The young master froze, clutching the fallen blood-stained handkerchief as he stared at me in a daze, like a ferocious beast cub abandoned in a dark, eerie cave, its cries and aura intimidating, yet when it poked its head out, its eyes were still full of confusion. I bent down to gather the porcelain shards, planning to call it a night, but just as I was about to pick up the fragment of the blue roux where in front of Yun Jian, a fair hand with prominent veins reached out and circled my wrist. The young master, who usually acted so high and mighty, lowered his eyes, not daring to look at anyone. It hurts, Jiang Rui. Moonlight cascaded like a waterfall. Yun Jian hesitated, then slowly leaned his head against that hand, not fair-skinned, even calloused. The scent reaching the tip of his nose wasn't the maiden's fragrance described in reckless ancient books. It was the clean, sharp smell of soap. Those hands, they were capable of anything. He had seen them hoist a whole bag of flour steadily, seen them swiftly and deftly craft delicious pastries. He had seen her fingertips holding needles to cure ailments. Now, those hands gently cradled his forehead, as if digging out a frozen heart from the snow. Where does it hurt? Jiang Rui asked. Yun Jian closed his eyes for a moment, not speaking for some reason. Jiang Rui assumed it was the young master's reserve and pride acting up again, so she did not urge him. After a long while, he took her hand and placed it on his forehead. Here, Jiang Rui. His fingers were long, with distinct knuckles, yet his palm had some flesh. Jiang Rui inadvertently pressed it, truly like a cat's paw, she thought. After that day, I realized that the so-called dignified and restrained young master was all a facade. Once a tiger is tamed, it turns into that beautiful civet cat back home that wouldn't let go of your leg. Every day, it's either flaunting its appearance or being jealous. When I groom Shuiyue, he stands by and sulks. Now it lives an increasingly extravagant life, becoming stout and plump. Does it still look like a Fergana horse? Might as well pick a day to send it to Taojiao for some training. At night, after he had eaten cold cake and received acupuncture, he still tugged at my hair. I was puzzled. I comb my hair myself every day, I said. Then he said, I know. I nodded, then quickly turned my thoughts around and smiled, praising. Awesome. Yun Jian also smiled. I was amused and exasperated, staring into his eyes for a long while before I finally caught on. I picked up the silver comb on the table and began to brush his hair, stroke by stroke. As I did, the tense lines in his shoulders and neck softened, and he leaned against my waist like a cat basking in the sun after a full meal. I accompanied him on a stroll, and before I knew it, we wandered into a bookshop. I stood there for ages studying the shelves, and when I came to my senses and turned around, I saw him standing outside the door, a new cape in hand, his expression icy cold. Jiang Rui, you abandoned me. I frantically racked my brains and came up with a speech longer than any policy essay to praise the new jewelry and clothes he had bought, and only then did the matter settle. On the way back, he forcefully grabbed my hand and made me touch his face, saying, Are the books better looking, or am I? The metropolitan examination was approaching, and I couldn't help but immerse myself in review, so why was I half an hour late again today? I tiptoed into the room. The young master slammed the silver comb onto the table, his face dark.
Today.
Yesterday. The day before. Ever since she had returned to the civil service examinations, he had begun an endless wait, waiting for her to attend to all sorts of trivial matters and priorities before finally coming to see him, to coax him. He had carefully groomed his hair, painstakingly chosen a hair chain, and put on a celestial silk brocade robe freshly tribute from the Jiangnan looms, all hoping that when she saw him, she would be happy and love him even more. He refused to lower himself to seek her out, yet couldn't stop himself from missing and resenting her. In his once arrogant and indifferent eyes now burned a shameful flame of jealousy and grievance, the source of which he himself didn't know. The imperial examination was near. Today I studied late into the night, moving quietly, guiltily sending pastries to him. He coldly refused to eat, pretending the book was so fascinating that it made you forget our time together again and again. I patiently rubbed his hand. The provincial exam is approaching. You fought for me to get a second chance at the imperial examinations. How could I waste it? I'm now immersing myself in study, all for the sake of passing the exams and becoming an official in the capital, so I can take our young master there to enjoy a good life. In the past, such words would easily placate him, but today he must have waited too long. He didn't turn around. In the mirror, he stared deeply at my face, a self-deprecating, cold smile on his lips. But now I see. Perhaps passing the exams and becoming an official is your priority, and what we have is nothing more than a fleeting affair. Jiang Rui, I only ask you, in your plans for the future, is there really a place for me? My heart went cold. I gently stroked his cheek. Adrian, you're overthinking again. I have indeed neglected you lately. After coaxing him into recommending me for the examination qualification, I devoted all my energy to study. I looked at our two figures pressed close together in the mirror, clothes against clothes, palms against skin, yet both of us were bathed in the pale, cold moonlight, every trace of warmth frozen through. Seeing Yun Jian still silent, I could only bend down and hold him. A Jian. I bit my lip, my eyes reddening, but my tone was firm. I won't take the exam. I'm not going to the capital. Forget those damned ambitions and ideals. My warm tears dripped onto Yun Jian's neck, yet they felt like molten iron. His gaze froze. I gently kissed his earlobe. A pair of icy hands seized my wrists and pinned me against the mirror. Yun Jian rubbed the skin at the corner of my eye with his thumb, his eyes like a churning deep pool. Jiang Rui, if you use me as a pawn. He paused, his eyes as cold as water tempered by frost. I will kill you. I met his gaze openly, but he looked away. Was that a threat or a plea for a promise? I smiled slightly, intertwining my fingers with his trembling ones. You are not my pawn. You are my most beloved. Before I could finish, a cold and fierce kiss fell upon me, biting and gnawing, uttering incoherent words of longing for love and embrace, pouring out all grievances, affection, and jealousy through lips and tongue. The cat, bullied too harshly, slapped the person hard, yet didn't even release its claws tips. Jiang Rui, if I ever become a female minister or official in the future, I shall ask your majesty to grant you and me marriage. As the examination draws near and I am about to leave, I made a promise to Yun Jian. In Great Jin, women are also granted the opportunity to take the imperial exams. However, during my last attempt, my brother meddled and disrupted the exam hall order, revoking my eligibility. Therefore, I must find someone with status and influence to recommend and vouch for me to regain the chance to sit for the exam. That night, having packed my luggage, I stood in the vast courtyard of the Yun residence, my expression rarely light and relaxed. This place, the first stepping stone to send me out. Through pretense and scheming, I have finally achieved my wish. The moonlight was like water as I organized the calligraphy copybooks and poems I had written into thick stacks, overcome with emotion. Just then, the door was pushed open and a figure in moon-white robes entered. I lowered my eyes, shifting to a more gentle and simple expression. Jiang Rui, Yun Jian said. Tonight he rarely wore only a moon-white sleeping robe. Stripped of all complicated and ornate decorations, it was clear yet not bland, exuding a seductive allure. Jiang Rui, he called again. It hurts. I was startled, furrowed my brow, and took his pulse. It was true that I had used Yun Jian, but I wasn't entirely ungrateful. I had needled him many times, even written to my master for advice, and had long since removed the root of his headaches. He hadn't had an attack in a long time. The pulse is very steady. Yun Jian suddenly withdrew his hand. Oh, I'm hungry. He stared straight at me, his eyelashes lifted, inexplicably reminding me of a cat with wide eyes. You didn't make me pastries today. I was speechless. Who was it that had previously complained about gaining weight from nightly snacks and forbade me to make them? But since it was the last day, I indulged him and made them. After he was full, he said he was cold again. In his own room, silver charcoal burned day and night, but he refused to go back and wrapped himself in my blanket instead. He watched me pack my books until dawn. When I set out for the capital, I didn't bring much. A few old clothes, a few books. The mountains were high and the road long. There was no need for clutter. When we stopped to rest at a post station, I then noticed a smooth, translucent jade pendant in the bundle, shaped like a yuanshao lanternfish, with a character carved in the lower left corner. A silence settled in my heart. I had no intention of deceiving anyone. I simply used whoever stood on the path of my benefit. I tucked the jade pendant away, and soon I would enter the capital. Luoyang was bustling, like an eternal nightless city. Standing atop the city wall, the last shred of hesitation in my heart was blown away by the wind. To govern the realm, I was needed. With my ambition brimming, I headed toward the temporary inn. On the long street, however, a group of officials in gold-brocaded uniforms came galloping on horseback. The common folk hurriedly made way, and I quickly stood aside to avoid them. The seventh prince was investigating a major criminal. No one was allowed to act rashly. The entire street was cordoned off for inspection. I waited amid the crowd for the procedure to unfold. But in a moment of distraction, the crowd suddenly surged for no apparent reason. I looked up and saw the leading officer among the soldiers lightly squeeze his horse's belly, and in an instant, he was before me. The sword's tip gleamed like a blade of light, aimed straight at my face. The approaching man wore a purple robe and a gold crown, with sword-like brows and starry eyes, sharp as a razor's edge. "Remove that mask and let me see you," he said. On my way to the imperial examinations, I had heard tales of the capital, the aging emperor, and among his princes, the seventh prince Yan Yunzheng and the fourth prince Yan Zhao held the greatest influence. There is no need to elaborate on the fourth prince. His maternal clan is naturally of a pure background, and he is benevolent, refined, and well-liked by the people. As for the seventh prince, his reputation among the common folk and court officials is far worse. Because his mother's identity is questionable, he was neglected since childhood, suffering the emperor's coldness and the suspicion of the court. His temperament is cruel and autocratic. The Ink Scale Guard under his command acts with extreme ruthlessness in the capital, and their methods of interrogating criminals are varied and brutal. The people are terrified at the mere mention of him, and the court officials have many criticisms of him. Previously, he used his military achievements to petition the emperor to rebuild his mother's tomb. The chancellor of the National Academy was indignant. How can a criminal consort's tomb be moved without authorization? If your majesty truly relocates her tomb and builds her mausoleum, it may bring disaster upon Great Jin once more. This old minister is willing to give up his life today to remonstrate with your majesty by dying. As he spoke, the elderly chancellor slammed his head against a pillar. The court historian tried to stop him, but the seventh prince held him back. The chancellor's head was bloodied, and he saw stars. Then the seventh prince walked slowly over, stepped on the chancellor's robe, and said, "You can still move. You haven't died yet. What's the point of your remonstration?" Matters of national fortune. The repair of the imperial tomb naturally came to nothing. However, on the way back to his mansion, the imperial preceptor's carriage collided with a patrol of the Ink Scale Guard. In the accident, he was thrown from the carriage, crashing into a stone pillar, bleeding profusely. Afterwards, he lay at home for 6 months unable to move, with a whole section of his head caved in. The seventh prince severely punished his subordinates and sent gifts to visit him multiple times, the gifts mostly being pig heads missing a corner. At this point, the storyteller shook his head, saying, "An eye for an eye." But Yan Yunzheng had numerous military achievements. In the previous war with the Eastern Yi, he captured 3 major cities of the Qi state consecutively, serving in the military as the stabilizing pillar of Great Jin. Therefore, there were still many people in the court supporting him. Now this god of death's face was only 3 feet away from me. In his hand, The sword that had drunk the blood of 10,000 men was pointed straight at me. I trembled slightly, swallowed my saliva, and quickly cupped my hands to beg for mercy. Your Excellency, this humble one is a candidate for the capital exams. I don't know. Before I finished speaking, I saw his blade decisively slice past me. I closed my eyes sharply, but then heard a muffled groan behind me. I looked back hesitantly. Behind me was empty, only a blood-stained face skin remained. Block the streets. Everyone, watch for any unfamiliar faces that suddenly appear. Yan Yunjung ordered coldly, his gaze sweeping over me as if looking at a corpse blocking the way. Listening to the soldiers' interrogations around me, I then learned that Yan Yunjung was hunting the main culprit of the thousand-face blood case, who had just been standing behind me. The criminal is skilled in disguise, said to carry dozens of human face masks and seamlessly blends into various settings. He has committed countless crimes. Previously, this case was under the Dali Temple, but now, involving several bloody murders of officials, it has been transferred to the Moulin Guard. Yan Yunjung spent several days tracking him here and was about to catch the man, but I blocked his way. The man took the opportunity to escape, changed his face again, and blended into the crowd. Thinking of this, I walked over to Yan Yunjung and said, "Sir, may I ask if there is any confirmed information about this culprit?" But before I could get close, several soldiers stopped me. Yan Yunjung waved his hand but didn't drive me away. He simply tapped his knuckles on the bamboo slips recording the case details. You're a candidate from outside the city. Have you heard of who I am? I nodded, my expression unchanged. Then, do you know what crime it is to get involved, obstruct the case, and now, on top of inquiring about case details, to ultimately make a fool of me? I met his deep, unfathomable eyes. Your reward and punishment can wait until I catch the culprit, Yan Yunjung said with a smirk, handing me the bamboo slip. After a brief perusal, I put it away, my gaze sweeping over the 100 or so people tightly encircled by soldiers. Hesitantly, I walked toward the flower seller on the left, swallowing hard. But just as I reached him, I suddenly raised my hand and scattered some powder toward a woman wearing flowers beside him. The woman instantly went limp. Yan Yunjung stepped forward and carefully examined her face, indeed peeling off a mask as thin as a cicada's wing. Since she had just disguised herself as a man in a flash, her build must not have changed much. I bent down and picked up her hand. The craftsmanship of the mask was exquisite, but she forgot to hide these thick, wide fingers. I looked up at Yan Yunjung and said, "If I guessed wrong, punish me. If I guessed right, what reward do you have for me, sir?" Yan Yunjung mounted his horse, turned back, pulled a jade pendant from his waist, and tossed it over. "If you manage to see me at court, you can use this to ask me for one favor. If you fail the imperial examinations, then consider it travel expenses." He lightly pressed his horse's flanks and galloped away. I put the pendant away, bought a steamed bun, and munched on it while marveling that the capital truly offered many opportunities. The top scorer in the metropolitan examination was a woman, and the second place in the palace examination was also a woman. It had been 10 years since a woman had appeared among the top 3 in the palace examination. It was not that women were inherently weak, but in recent years, the requirements for women to take the examinations had become increasingly strict. In the 29th year of the Jinsi era, I was appointed as a compiler in the Hanlin Academy. I was not well received by my colleagues and court officials. After 3 months on the job, I was ordered to proofread the collection of outstanding essays from previous metropolitan examinations, and I uncovered a case of fraud involving false registration and cross-regional examination. The court and the common people were shocked. In recent years, the public had been particularly sensitive to examination fraud, and this incident stirred up even greater indignation. His Majesty appointed Censor-in-Chief, Shen Xiai, to verify the matter. The moment I heard the name Shen Xiai, my back stiffened. How could it be that cold, hard brick? Before this case, I had already crossed paths with him at the entrance of the Hanlin Academy. On my first day in the Hanlin Academy, a fellow new scholar who had just passed the imperial exam, grateful for my guidance before the test, gave me a fine box of ink paste. His family was well off, so his generosity was grand. Even the brocade box was made of the finest rosewood. After several rounds of refusal, I had no choice but to accept. This scene caught the eye of Shen Xiai, who was investigating official affairs. To him, It looked like I was taking bribes on my very first day, displaying improper conduct. Gain favor and profit through scheming. The Hamlin Academy is a place of purity, not a marketplace for transactions. If you too wish to exchange gifts privately, please choose another venue. I tried to explain, but he just shot me a warning glance, saying, "It's up to you," sparing his words as if speaking one more sentence to someone as scheming as me would taint his eyes. The terrified fellow scholar crawled out from a nearby flower bed, patting his chest. Scary. Why did we run into that mad dog on our first day? Good thing I hid quickly. Meldo? I asked, puzzled. That scholar was pure-hearted and rarely used such words to describe others. I follow my father's way of calling him that, hee. But don't tell anyone. In this capital, there are two people you absolutely must avoid. One is the seventh prince. He's a bit fierce and likes to catch people. I frowned. Just a bit. This fellow examinee seemed both conflicted and reluctant to even mention the seventh prince. As for the other one, that imperial censor from a prestigious and noble family, even his breath had to be measured when walking past him, lest the slightest mistake invite the weight of legal codes to crush you. My father once hosted an autumn banquet, and this censor found 7 faults of impropriety and misconduct, reporting them directly to His Majesty. Now His Majesty has assigned him to investigate the case of fraudulent examination registration and cross-prefecture candidacy. I waited anxiously outside the imperial study for a long time. When Shen Xiai walked out, I plastered a smile on my face and approached him. Lord Shen, we will be working together on this case. I hope you will be lenient. If your findings are true, there's no need for leniency from me. If you attempt bribery as you did last time, then please follow me to the Surveillance Bureau. His cold eyes swept over my ingratiating smile, a flicker of disgust in them. Present all your evidence at noon tomorrow. His words were as devoid of warmth as his retreating figure.
Meldo, I cuffs inwardly, my smile unwavering.
The next day, just after the hour of Chen, I stood before the censorate with the evidence I had compiled after a sleepless night. If at this moment, the old pedants in the Hamlin Academy were still having breakfast and chatting over tea with their colleagues, but Shen Xiai was already seated at her desk, sharp-eyed and stern, discussing something with her subordinates. What I need is an exact number, not an approximation. If there's no complete summary and chain of evidence before the end of duty today, you needn't bother showing up for roll call tomorrow. A few subordinates walked out with cold sweat dripping, their backs slumping the moment they stepped out. Passing by me, one of them couldn't help but glance sideways. It was Jiang Shoubian, who had recently made a name for himself by uncovering the case of fraudulent examination registrations across provinces. The few exchanged glances and let out strange laughs. Jiang Shoubian, there's a rumor among the common folk that you, a woman, were so eager for fame and success that you fabricated this whole affair. What do you think of that rumor? I clasped my hands and smiled. Official business is pressing today. I must take my leave. I wish you all the best in making it to tomorrow's roll call. Their faces turned green, choked silent. The duty room was cold and orderly. Even the paperweight was placed with meticulous precision. Shen Xiai sat upright at the desk, meticulously verifying each piece of evidence in the chain I had investigated. These 2 volumes of transcripts, who copied them? Did the copying officials and collating officials affix their seals? A question and answer, no loopholes, a complete closed loop. Shen Xiai lowered his eyes and said decisively, "Compiler Jiang, go back and wait first. After I and several officials from the censorate have jointly reviewed and stamped them, they will be presented to His Majesty." Meticulous and tedious it was, but also truly fair and effective. At this point, I finally revealed a faint smile. "Please proceed as quickly as possible, Lord." The next day at court, Shen Xiai confirmed the case of fraudulent registration and cross-examination to be true, and following the evidence, he impeached more than a dozen senior officials in succession. His words were so sharp and cold that, standing below the imperial throne, I couldn't help but swallow nervously. A true remonstrance official, truly, his tongue was a sharp weapon. One minister, old enough that age spots had emerged on his skin, stood trembling before him. He showed no mercy whatsoever. That minister was so furious that he spat out a mouthful of old blood and collapsed to the ground. However, when the emperor asked him how to evaluate my contributions, he did not hesitate either. Compiler Jiang investigated the case with rigorous procedures, complete evidence chains, and a fair heart. She deserves the primary credit for this case. With the case solved, all involved candidates and officials were severely punished, purging the examination hall, and tens of thousands of scholars felt their spirits greatly uplifted. Because I had only recently entered the court, and many officials vehemently opposed the rapid promotion of female officials, the emperor instead rewarded me with 2,000 taels of gold, 100 bolts of brocade, and various pre-prepared writing brushes, ink sticks, paper, and inkstones. After the officials dispersed, the emperor kept me behind in the hall for guidance before I finally left. On the long stone steps, the setting sun streaked across the sky like colored ink. Halfway down, I saw an unexpected figure standing at the foot of the steps. His formerly stern and upright green official robe softened threefold in the glow of the twilight. The man stood holding his tablet at the edge of the path. Minister Shen, waiting for someone? Shen Si's jade-like face was unsmiling, his eyes lowered as he said coldly, "The path for a woman to become an official is increasingly difficult. Don't be discouraged by a single setback. In this case, you indeed deserve the primary credit." I suddenly recalled what I had heard from colleagues about this imperial censor. He was a weapon forged by ritual and law, his blade's cold gleam able to illuminate both black and white. Unmoved by external things, unchanging with the heart. I smiled, cupped my hands in thanks, and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Minister." He nodded and left. After thinking for a moment, I jogged after him. "Minister, wait. What are your measurements?" That day, Shen Si's tablet nearly knocked me unconscious. "You, frivolous." I had merely thought, since the emperor's brocade was more than I could use, I would make him a set of clothes. The case of taking exams under false identities had been solved, sparking endless public discussion. A decade later, the Hanlin Academy reintroduced female officials. Just after taking office, solving such a major case, the Academy received its 79th pot of orchids in thanks. People's address for me changed from Miss Jiang to Compiler Jiang. My desk was moved near the main hall, and the Academy head handed me the keys to the library. I was repeatedly arranged to serve as a lecturer for the Imperial Classics seminar, drafting lecture outlines. The seats were full, with no gaps left or right. After the lecture, as I was tidying up the books, a colleague handed me an old book. "Lu Ji asked me to return this to you. He has some family matters recently and needs to take some time off." Lu Ji was my fellow candidate with a good heart. He was always cheerful on duty, entering the Hanlin Academy as joyfully as stepping into a tavern, so free and happy. That this man would take leave surprised me. As I was puzzling over it, that colleague leaned in and whispered, "It's said that his sister caught the eye of the folding fan lord, who has been causing trouble in the capital lately." I was startled. The folding fan lord, wasn't he the flower thief who had been unsettling the hearts of people in the capital? He is cunning and lecherous, targeting only unmarried beauties regardless of whether they are commoners or nobles. So far, he has committed 4 crimes but remains uncaught due to his cautious hiding and methods. The official reward has reached 1,000 taels. It is said that this lecher is so confident in his skills that whenever he sets his eyes on a woman, he leaves a folding fan in advance as a token. Truly arrogant. No wonder Lu Ji has been on leave recently. His female family members have caught the lecher's eye. I've met Lu Ji's younger sister. She is truly as cold as frost and surpasses snow, a stunning beauty. Every time she brought meals for Lu Ji during his duty, she would also bring a portion for me. After thinking for a moment, I went to the Dali Temple to borrow the case files and skimmed through them, hoping to find some clues about that scoundrel. While racking my brains, a chestnut shell suddenly fell on my head. Who dares to trespass into the Dali Temple archives? Are they tired of living? The voice came before the person, arrogant and cold, with a hint of laziness and chill. I hastily took out the letter of credentials and presented it. "I am Jiang Rui from the Hanlin Academy. I have already requested permission from the Vice Minister to review the case files of the folding fan gentleman. Present them." I was about to step forward, but the person said again, "Stop." Lowering my head, "You, a mere 7th-rank official, dare to show no respect before me." I had no choice but to bow and present it with both hands, yet I couldn't help but sneak a glance as I approached. Today, the man wore a dark blue brocade robe with gold trim, lazily leaning against the railing with a mischievous grin. casually shelling chestnuts. Jiang Rui, Jiang Xiubian, we meet again. Seventh Prince Yan Yundeng. Damn it. I forced a smile. Your Highness, with nothing better to do, you're here to toy with me again. He snorted coldly, stepping forward, his gaze sweeping over the documents in my hand. Jiang Rui, I said that if you ever see me again, I'll grant you one favor. You've been staring at these 2 pages for 2 whole incense sticks and still haven't found the answer. His slender fingers lifted a page of the dossier, letting it fall lightly. You can ask me to help you investigate. I thought for a moment, hugged the dossier, stepped back and said with a smile, it was your Highness who invited me to help, wasn't it? Yan Yundeng's eyes turned 3 degrees colder, his narrow eyes narrowing like a snake before it strikes. What? I wasn't afraid, and cupped my hands in salute. I had long heard that when the prince was stranded outside the palace, the Liu family took him in. Lord Liu and his wife would rather let their own 2 hungry infants go without food and leave the only dry rations, water and milk on the road for the prince. This even became a tale of loyal ministers protecting their lord among the people. The prince is busy with the affairs of the Inkscale Guard, yet appears here at this hour in the Dali Temple archives, sitting for so long without finding any leads. It seems it's not me who is stuck. Exposed by me, Yan Yunjing tugged at the corner of his mouth with a smirk, sprawling boldly into a chair and fixing his eyes on me. Truly, exceptionally clever. Then guess what I want to do now? He shook the Celadone cup in his hand, the thin rim reflecting the faint glint of a blade at his cuff. Bastard, no wonder he's even harder to deal than that mad dog before. I gritted my teeth, but ingratiatingly spread the scrolls open before him, saying, Your Highness, look here. The dossier depicted all 4 fan patterns given by the flower thief. Yan Yundeng studied them for a moment. You mean the plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum? Not the usual ones, are they? I curled my lips, excitement sparkling in my eyes. At the Drunken Immortal Pavilion, Yan Yundeng sat in the private room, watching me skillfully dismiss the madam. He looked odd. Do you come here often? I waved my hand. SOSO, just used to run errands for the girls in Chongling's brothels when I couldn't afford meals. Got a lot of work experience. Seeing his urge to pry further, I quickly steered his attention to the matter at hand. Your Highness, please take a closer look at the screen in the main hall downstairs. Those graceful beauties are each holding a vase with flower branches inside. The surroundings are cluttered, so the branches aren't obvious. There's one each of plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum. Now, Your Highness, see if the tips of those branches are adorned with sparkling gold thread dewdrops. The madam, a money lover, named the girls golden plum, golden orchid, golden bamboo, and golden chrysanthemum, vulgarities that didn't quite fit. Yan Yundeng took a sip of tea and said, I waved my hand. Non-committal. They were both ordinary objects and extraordinary ones, exactly matching the paintings on the fan of that flower thief. That little thief was someone from the Drunken Immortal Pavilion. And though the Drunken Immortal Pavilion had many treasures, he only used the imagery from the 4 screens, plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum, suggesting his status was low, only able to move around the 1st and 2nd floors. Yan Yunjing and I conducted a secret investigation and found that one of the servants in the Drunken Immortal Pavilion was the most suspicious. Taking advantage of his being out today, Yan Yunjing and I sneaked into his room. The cramped space was filled with portraits of women, spread out or folded, emitting a foul stench. Yan Yunjing felt his feet burning just standing there and wished he could block his nose. I comforted him while covering my own nose and collecting key evidence. Just as we were about to leave, a slow, halting footstep came from the doorway. There was nowhere to hide. Yan Yunjing grabbed my hand and pulled me behind the door. In the narrow, cramped space, the unbearable stench was overwhelming. I stealthily buried my face against Yan Yunjing's chest to catch a few breaths, but he suddenly gripped my wrist tightly, his eyes filled with disbelief. Knowing I was in the wrong, I quickly lowered myself, shifting my face away and bowing my head, missing the surging murderous intent in Yan Yunjing's eyes. I kept my breathing low, but the sound of his steps, slow and deliberate, stopped before reaching the door. I looked alertly at the door handle and saw that it wasn't shut tightly, letting in a sliver of light. Damn it! Without time to explain, I turned and rushed out. Outside the room, past the attic storeroom, was the bustling first floor. He noticed. Yan Yunjing caught up and whispered, and I nodded, hurriedly pulling him to give chase, but several girls blocked our way. Young master, you're leaving already? The brothel keeper sashayed over with a warm smile, blocking us eagerly. Is it that the servants didn't attend to you properly? Or there's no girl to your liking? Yan Yunjing frowned impatiently. Get lost. The madam didn't take his tone. Instead, she grabbed a stunning girl and pushed her toward him. Don't be upset, sir. It seemed that seeing Yan Yunjing dressed in luxury, but only buying a few pots of tea, she wasn't willing to let this fat sheep slip away. Seeing Yan Yunjing's hand already gripping the concealed weapon in his sleeve, I stepped forward and whispered in her ear, Sorry, but I really can't afford any delays. This time, I only withdrew 10 taels from the accounts, and my wife found out and came after me with a knife. My young master has to leave quickly. The madam's eyes shifted, and she had no choice but to give up. With no money and a shrewish wife at home, this deal wasn't worth making. Finally, I smoothly left the drunken Immortal Tavern. The young attendant at the door said that the pimp had hurried off in the direction of the city gate. Without a moment's hesitation, I borrowed a horse from the roadside and galloped straight for the Lu residence. Behind me, a signal flare shot up, presumably Yan Yunjing urgently summoning troops. In an instant, Yan Yunjing caught up, his eyes swirling with deep emotions. The pimp's trail being discovered likely means he wants to leave the city quickly. If you want to claim merit, you should head to the city gate. Your Highness, why have you followed me? I didn't look back, spurring my horse onward. What your Highness is thinking is exactly what I'm thinking. Miss Lu cannot afford that 1 in 10,000 chance of mutual destruction. When we arrived at the Lu residence, the steward greeted Yan Yunjing with surprise and familiarity. Your Highness, why have you come at this hour? Without time to explain, Yan Yunjing led me straight to Lu Su's courtyard. As we pushed open the door, the shifty-looking lackey was fondling Lu Su's half-bared shoulder with infatuation. Without a moment's hesitation, Yan Yunjing almost instantly shot a sharp short blade. The fierce wind of the blade grazed my cheek and pierced straight through the lackey's palm. I rushed forward and threw a handful of powder to immobilize the lackey. In a few quick moves, I covered Lu Su's skin and then took off my outer robe to wrap her up. She must have been drugged by the lackey with a paralytic. Her body was limp, but she remained conscious, forced to watch helplessly as he groped her. Truly malicious. Now, like a jade-like, snow-pure beauty, she was trembling with tears, unable to utter a word. She could only flutter her lashes in terror. Seeing this, my heart blazed with fury. I kicked the lackey 2 meters away. The room was filled with harmful narcotics, so I quickly carried Lu Su to a stone bench in the courtyard. This lecher was indeed formidable. He had infiltrated the residence of a third-rank official and silently drugged the gentle lady of the house. No wonder they hadn't caught him before. The first words Lu Su managed to utter once his senses and strength returned were drowned in surging tears that dripped onto my palm. Filthy. He stared with hatred at his left shoulder, where that turtle slave had touched him, as if he longed to cut off that piece of flesh. Lu's parents and Lu Ji rushed over at the sound, but he wouldn't let anyone touch him, huddled in my arms, repeating that single word over and over. I wiped away his tears, kneading his shoulder. It's not dirty. I've rubbed it away. Finally, I coaxed him into going inside with his mother. Lu Ji, eyes filled with hot tears, rushed up and grabbed my hand.
Jian Hui.
You saved my sister. From now on, if you ever take to the mountains, I swear I'll never go down to the sea. The big black dog they kept also crouched in front of me, tears in its eyes, and placed one paw on my leg, barking twice. A voice, carrying a faint disdain and untamed coldness, cut in and interrupted this show of loyalty from man and dog. I watched Lu, she clenched his fist. Illiterate, Yan Yunjing added, arms crossed, every word a provocation. You bastard, I passed the Hanlin Academy exam, who are you calling illiterate? Yan Yunjing stood half a head taller, smirking, his words directed at him but his eyes on me. In childhood, he was illiterate, and as an adult he's still a black dog. Even the dog barked at him twice in defiance. With one look from Yan Yunjing, the dog awkwardly tucked its tail and slunk away. Rumor has it that Yan Yunjung was indebted to the Lu family for escorting him, and folk tales have spun several versions of the Lu family forcing him to marry Lu Su, with Lu Ji fighting him over it. But whether true or not remains in doubt. Master Lu insisted we stay for a meal, and we couldn't refuse. During the meal, Lu Ji served me with both hands, practically trying to put the whole chicken in my bowl, while Yan Yunjung unhurriedly deboned the chicken and ladled the soup. He didn't refuse the dishes Lu's mother offered him, acting quite at home. Before we left, Lu Su finally came out of the house to see us off. "Brother, thank you for this," she said softly to Yan Yunjung, using brother instead of your highness. Yan Yunjung didn't refute it. As my mind was racing, she walked slowly up to me. "Jiang Xiubian," she said quietly. Pausing for a moment, she didn't raise her eyes to look at me. Jiang Rue answered repeatedly. "What is it?" She slightly lifted her gaze, her lips pressed together, then shook her head. "Nothing. I'll need to go to the Hanlin Academy in a few days to bring my brother his meal." I was taken aback, then laughed. "Then I'll get to see Miss Lu again." She lowered her head. The lamplight was dim. I tried to get a better look at her expression, but suddenly felt a sense of suffocation. "Stop being a smart aleck," Yan Yunjing said, grabbing me by the back of my collar and pulling me away. On the way back, Yan Yunjing kindly treated me to a bowl of wonton noodles, the kind with extra chili and vinegar. "Eat up. Wasn't the food just now not to your liking?" I was startled. The Lu family's banquet had obviously been carefully prepared, but it was mostly bland and light. In the bowl, the dishes piled up by Lu Ji formed a small mountain, but I had mostly been chatting and hadn't eaten much. Yan Yunjing had actually noticed. "Is Changling's palate that heavy?" Yan Yunjing himself adapted well to light cuisine and was only having a cup of tea. I ate the wontons in big mouthfuls and shook my head at him between bites. In the future, my taste will gradually become milder. Before, at home and doing heavy labor outside, only spicy food could give me strength. Now, everything will be fine. This time, you helped me save the Lu family, and I owe you another favor. Yan Yunjing rested his head lazily, a hint of sinister smile appearing in his eyes. "Too many favors will get you killed." I lowered my eyes slightly and swallowed the last wonton. "Your Highness, I want to cash in this favor now. I want all the reward money for the case of the folding fan gentleman." Yan Yunjing looked me over for a moment, a smile curling at the corners of his mouth. "All right, Editor Jiang. You're very short of money." As the owner came over to settle the bill, I quickly pointed at Yan Yunjing across from me. Who in this world isn't short of money? Besides, at my home in Chongling, I have a frail and helpless cousin who needs looking after. The smile in Yan Yunjing's eyes deepened. "Is that so?" After the case of the folding fan gentleman was concluded, His Majesty personally issued a decree. Hanlin Academy editor Jiang Rue captured the scoundrels and stabilized the capital. He has rendered meritorious service to the state. I am deeply gratified. Special bestowal: 1,000 silver taels, 100 bolts of palace silk, and 1 imperial horse. As a token of commendation, she was permitted to observe and advise on difficult criminal cases at the Grand Court and the Ministry of Justice. Though no official promotion was granted, the female compiler from the Hanlin Academy, who had repeatedly solved extraordinary cases, had become renowned among the people. Among the women she had rescued this time were daughters of officials, and the court minister's assessments of her gradually changed. As the year drew to a close, it was her turn for duty. Having stayed up all night flipping through ancient texts, she appeared somewhat listless today. Just as she stepped over the threshold into the duty room, a warm steamed bun was pressed against her face. "Jiang Rue, the meat buns at Tianxiang Pavilion are only sold in the first 3 steamer baskets each morning." I smiled gratefully and sat down at the desk to browse through case files. Outside the door, Lu Ji paced back and forth, teasing a cat and a dog, chatting and gossiping with his colleagues. Annoyed by the noise, I poked my head out to scold him, only to find him cradling a stray spotted dog in his arms. Both man and dog were startled by me. Both of us wilted and grew quiet. It was peaceful all morning, but at noon, Lu Ji sneaked in again with a food box, looking like a sneaky dog. Seeing that my expression didn't change, he came over and pointed at the stains on his official robe to complain. "You don't know how those little brats scramble for food like dogs, splattering soup everywhere." "Did you win the fight?" I interrupted him. Of course. He proudly opened the food box, grinning happily. Today, we'll eat together, just the two of us. I lied to my sister and said you weren't on duty today, so she didn't follow me. As we ate and drank soup, I listened to Luigi embellish his story, complaining even about the near-invisible red marks from a dog scratch. I thought to myself, next time I'll lie and tell him I'm not on duty either. That night, only a few patrolling guards and 3 colleagues on rotating duty, far apart from each other, remained in the Hanlon Academy. Outside the window, sparse tree shadows cast under the silver moon. After handling official business, I stretched. After a moment's thought, I took a scroll from the bookshelf, but before I could unroll it, a shadow fell across the clean desk. I quickly reached inside the desk, but the person pressed me down against the chair back first. Who could slip into the Hanlon Academy without being detected by the patrolling guards? A strand of silky black hair fell against my neck like the belly of a venomous snake gliding over its prey, and in an instant, a hand coldly and lightly rested on my nape. Before it could tighten, I suddenly turned my head and bit down hard on a lock of his hair. He yelped in pain, and his hand instantly clenched, lifting my face. Seizing the chance, I freed my hand from his grip and saw him clearly. In that moment of his distraction, a handful of purple powder flew out. I quickly covered my nose and mouth, trying to bend down to avoid it, but he grabbed my wrist and pulled me back, nose to nose. Each of us inhaled half. Jiang Rui, you know it's me, don't you? We both slumped against the bookshelf, lacking even the strength to stand. Yen Yundun squinted and asked with a smile. The black jade earring by his ear seemed as dark as his heart. I quickly shook my head innocently. Your Highness, your servant is terrified. Damaging the heir's body. Which article of the Great Gene Code does that violate? I furrowed my brow deeply, looking utterly pained. Your Highness, the full statute states, anyone who willfully harms the heir's body shall be punished by the death penalty. Your Highness chose an unorthodox route to visit, making me dazedly think it was the fan gentleman who had escaped prison to settle accounts with me. I acted in self-defense. How can it be considered willful harm? And yet, he compared him to that wicked, depraved fan gentleman. Yen Yundun gritted his teeth and narrowed his eyes at this slippery, eel-like 7th-rank official who sat limply on the ground, smiling ingratiatingly at him as if humble to the extreme, yet those fox-like eyes gleamed faintly, like the faintly visible heads of piranhas lurking beneath clear, azure lake waters. One misstep, and she'd have you tangled in her trap. Jiang Rui, aren't you curious why I, the sovereign, summoned you in the dead of night? What good could come from being sought out by this troublesome madman? I was about to laugh it off and weasel out as usual, but then I saw Yen Yundeng smiling at me with a sly grin, so I quickly changed my tune. Your humble servant is most curious indeed. Yen Yundeng let out a satisfied laugh. By now, the effects of the powder had mostly worn off. He stood up and extended a hand toward me. I hesitated. Why would he be so kind? But the moment I reached out, he grabbed me by the shoulder and sleeve, lifting me like a chick. No thanks, he said. Damn it. Then he sat down in my seat, playing with my brush and official documents, all while giving me orders. I need you to investigate a case for me and save someone. He flipped open the dossier on the table, the very one I had been planning to read, the case of the embezzlement of grain and silver in the waterways transport. In the autumn of the 7th year of Tianqi, a fleet of grain boats carrying 800,000 taels of silver as military pay for the border garrison at Jizhou encountered a rare storm at Blackwater Gorge. 3 main vessels laden with silver capsized and sank, and the paste silver fell into the river. The escort officials urgently salvaged, but found only a few empty crates, claiming that 60,000 taels of military pay were lost due to the heavy boxes and treacherous currents, making retrieval impossible. The Ministry of Justice conducted a days-long investigation and discovered that Shen Xiai, an imperial censor, had been in close correspondence with one of the grain transport accountants. They also found that tens of thousands of silver taels had been transferred through a remittance house to Shen Xi's maternal uncle, Shen Huai. Although the case remains unresolved, rumors in the court that Shen Xiai is the mastermind behind this scandal have grown rampant, and Shen Xiai has been imprisoned as a suspect. I fell silent for a moment. Your Highness believes in Shen Xi's integrity and thinks he would never do such a thing. You don't believe it either, do you? He tilted his chin toward the dossier on the table, which I had half opened. Besides, this case is too large in scale. It requires coordinating resources from the grain transport authorities, local administrations, and even the military. It's impossible for Shin Si-ai, a mere 7th-rank remonstrance official, even with the backing of the century-old Shin family, to pull it off so flawlessly. I lowered my eyes, pondering for a moment. I'm sorry, but I cannot investigate this case. Since His Highness can think of this, the Emperor and the Court of Judicial Review must have considered it as well. Lord Shin will not die unjustly. I am no saint, and I don't meddle in every case beyond my means. Yen Yunjung seemed to have expected my refusal and showed no disappointment, but now the evidence and the culprit are both in hand, all pointing solely to Shin Si-ai. There are more than 1 or 2 officials in court who have long been dissatisfied with him, all quietly stirring up the tide of rumors. The Shun family, as leaders of the pure-minded scholars for 100 years, cannot tolerate even a hint of defilement and have already resolved to sacrifice Shin Si-ai to cleanse their reputation. I fear the white silk and poisoned wine will be sent soon. Under the moonlight, I watched from the shadows as I gently rubbed the jade slip in Yen Yunjing's hand. Who is Your Highness suspecting? Yen Yunjing chuckled, pleased with my sharpness. The Vice Minister of War, Li Ji.
I see.
Li Ji's sister is the current emperor's consort Shu, and also the maternal uncle of the 4th prince, the hottest candidate for heir apparent. If he solves this case, Yen Yunjing not only drastically weakens the 4th prince's influence, but also wins over Shin Si-ai, a double win. The struggle for the heir apparent is indeed brutal. Moonlight tangled around the treetops, and I glanced down at the jade slip in my hand, letting out a faint chuckle. There was even a rare moment of bluntness. For what? The infighting among nobles and century-old families. Drag me, a lowly 7th-rank official, into this muddy water? I didn't come to the capital to throw away my life. Besides, if I help him with this, I'll be nailed to the 7th prince's faction for good. I only serve His Imperial Majesty. Master Shun will be fine. If something goes wrong, that's just fate. Each man has his own destiny. A hint of hypocritical compassion crept onto my features. Yen Yunjung eyed me, a strange glint surfacing in his gaze.
He spoke again.
Shin Si-ai is quite capable, and His Majesty thinks highly of him. Right now, the Emperor is overwhelmed. He needs an absolute sword. I will recommend you not to work for the 7th prince. I will ask His Majesty for a secret edict and grant you an imperially bestowed confidential case. With it, your memorials can be sent directly to the inner court, bypassing all procedures. Only His Majesty shall review it. During the investigation, you may hold my writ to mobilize a small number of garrison troops and secret agents in the capital and the involved locations, without needing to go through the Ministry of War or the prefectural offices for authority and security, thus securing the Emperor's trust. Once the case is resolved, your merits will be indisputable, and you will surely be promoted. He paused, then said, the proposal for the Women's Recommendation Office, which has been stalled for 20 years under the Lady Shui official, I will have someone revive and advance it. Hearing this, my eyes finally flickered. The female teacher from Chongling Academy had once told me that the heyday of women holding office was during the lifetime of the Lady Shui official. At that time, within the 6 ministries, there were nearly 20 women serving as chief officials. Following the example from above, every year women passed the imperial examinations, even ranking among the top 30. 30 years ago, the Lady Shui official established the Women's Recommendation Office, raising funds and setting up a system to help talented women who were hindered by various constraints from studying and taking the exams. This matter involves great significance. Many officials secretly obstructed until the autumn 10 years ago, when the Shui female official, leading a few trusted female officials, went south on a private visit to an academy and was assassinated by 3 men. The Ministry of Justice's investigation confirmed that the 3 men all admired her but were rejected, turning love into hate. The case was hastily closed, branding the Shui female official with a label of moral impropriety. Then others accused her of accepting bribes during her tenure and proposing the Women's Recommendation Office merely to line her own pockets. The immense gossip, along with the deaths of several female officials, led to a gap in the system of women serving as officials. The Women's Recommendation Office was repeatedly shelved, and the rules for women holding office became increasingly strict and harsh. A group of incompetents launched a siege against the upward and positive aspirations of women everywhere. When speaking of this, the female teacher was deeply pained for the Shui female official. The seventh prince bringing up this matter again was by no means merely to win me over and use me to resolve the canal transport case. For the first time, I began to seriously examine this prince, known in rumors as capricious, cruel, and unrighteous. Seeing that I still remained silent, Yan Yunjung lightly tapped his knuckles on the open dossier on the table, where the name Shen Xiai stood out starkly and desolately. Jiang Rui, you have a reason you must investigate this matter, he chuckled softly, his eyes deep and unfathomable. Do you know who will take over his position as imperial censor if Shen Xiai falls? Huang Wei, a man nearly 50, once served in the Ministry of Justice and was the lead investigator in the case of the Shui female officials. The charge for this malicious murder was categorized as a crime of passion, and eventually the three main offenders had their sentences commuted from death by dismemberment to exile. Within the 6 ministries, corruption and collusion have long been rampant. Currently, among the main functional positions in the 6 ministries, there are no more than 5 female officials. If Huang Wei takes office as the new imperial censor, that number will only decrease. Jiang Rui, although Shen Xiai is rigid and cold, you have to admit that in the officialdom such a person is instead a shield for all those who seek fairness and justice. If the imperial censor is replaced by Huang Wei, the path for me to rise will only become more difficult. Yan Yunjung indeed brought me important information that night. I lowered my eyes and rubbed the golden auspicious pattern on the pinky ring of my left hand, lost in thought. He closed the dossier and brushed past me. He said softly, I'll give you 1 day to consider. The case can wait for you, but the poisoned wine the Shen family sent won't. Halfway out, he remembered he'd jumped in through the window, so he turned back. Just as he was about to make a cool leap out, I grabbed him back. He stumbled, nearly crashing into the windowsill, and turned to glare at me, the black jade at his ear gleaming like a dark-scaled fish under moonlight. With innocent sincerity in my eyes, I said, Your Highness, I meant to tell you, there's no time to lose. We must start the investigation tonight. We cannot let a pillar of the state like Lord Shen suffer such an unjust wrong. By the time I rushed to the prison with the evidence, the Shen family's white silk and poisoned wine had already arrived. No explanation accompanied it. The poisoned wine sent by his own kin had already spoken for the entire family's stance. The Shen family is a century-old house of pure repute, once unmatched in glory 100 years ago, producing an imperial tutor and 2 grand secretaries. For such a family, honor outweighs life and death. The mere suspicion of a Shen descendant being entangled in a corruption case is more important than the truth itself. For the Shen family, letting Shen Xiai prove his integrity through death was the best choice. A child of Shen would rather die than be disgraced. Shen Xiai sat in his cell. His posture was upright, dressed in a plain iris blue shirt with collar and cuffs meticulously fitted, showing no sign of disgrace, completely out of place in the oppressive, somewhat chaotic prison, like a slender bamboo plant abruptly transplanted into filthy soil. He suddenly thought of when his grandfather was falsely accused and chose death to prove his integrity. Was that cup of wine also sent by the family? Now, the same scene was reenacting before him. His grandmother's stern face appeared in his mind. When he was young, his younger cousin had snatched his toy during a banquet and argued with him. And his grandmother punished him by making him kneel in the ancestral hall for a whole day and night, ignoring his explanations that his cousin had been rude first. Was the reason important? Because their childish behavior had made the Shen family a laughingstock at the banquet, saying that the younger generation of the Shen family had no virtue. From then on, he strictly adhered to etiquette, excelling in poetry, calligraphy, chess, and martial arts. In his youth, his brilliance astonished the world. His essays and political commentaries spread across the land, and he was the favorite disciple of his revered mentor. At a refined poetry gathering hosted by a respected elder, Shen Xiai and several disciples were asked to compose poems for comparison. During the circulation of poems for review, his competitor splashed ink on his poem, causing Shen Xiai to miss out on the top prize. That competitor, however, won first place in the judgment of the entire assembly. His grandmother punished him by making him copy the Book of Rights 100 times. When he tried to explain, his grandmother, in a rage, gave him a lash with a whip. Do you have evidence? If you speak out, people will only laugh that we Shin disciples cannot accept defeat. The one who won now is the second son of the Zhao family. From now on, people will only remember that it was the Zhao family's poem that outshone ours. Who will seek the truth for you? Agitated and careless in handling matters, you have damaged the family's pure reputation. The world never cares about reasons, only results. A scion of the Shin family either wins immaculately or dies cleanly. It turned out to be a prophecy come true. Shin Siai lowered his eyes and accepted the poisoned wine. The white silk bore marks. Grandmother would not want the Shin family to produce an unsightly corpse. Suddenly, from the far end of the prison cell came urgent footsteps. The newcomer ran hastily and quickly. Who could it be? It would never be his parents, who completely obeyed grandmother, nor would it be his political enemies who wished for his death. It was a woman with a pallid face and dark circles under her eyes, clutching an armful of documents. She charged into the prison cell with all her might, knocking the poisoned wine from his hand in the process. What rude woman was this? The old family servant frowned and stepped forward. I am Jiang Rui, compiler of the Hanlin Academy and the Emperor's personally appointed imperial envoy for the Grand Canal corruption case. Her face was cold, her posture commanding. Her words instantly diminished the old servant's voice. Lord Jiang, this is our mistress's order. Shut up. This is not your place to speak. It was that compiler Jiang, whose words were unreliable but whose actions, investigations, and reports left no fault to be found. She was not tall, yet at this moment she stood before him like a towering figure, blocking all the old servant's prying eyes. Shin Siai, I've found evidence of your innocence. I cut straight to the point, spreading out the stack of papers in my arms. These are your manuscripts and draft memorials I retrieved from the censorate. I compared them with the handwriting in the secret letters. Although they are highly similar, the secret letters consistently have a distinct finishing stroke that yours lack. Moreover, I also traced the origin and batch of the letter paper. This batch clearly only entered the capital after the Grand Canal case was exposed. Shin Siai, just give me a little more time, and I will find irrefutable proof of your innocence. I was about to bring out the next chapter when Shin Siai interrupted me. Director Jiang, just submit these to His Majesty. No need to come here specially. He took the wine cup handed over by the old servant. I grabbed his wrist, my gaze sharp. So, whether you're innocent or not, you have to die. My lord, this was ordered by our old madam, the old servant said earnestly. Without turning my head, I said coldly, was I asking you just now? Seeing her finally fall silent, I looked at Shin Siai before me. Shin Siai, I only ask you, are you willing to die? Are you willing to die when you are clearly innocent? Shin Siai didn't answer directly. Jiang Rui, as long as I live one more day, the difficulty of your investigation increases, and the humiliation the Shin family suffers lasts another day. The entire Shin family, from the court to the common folk, all wish me dead. Having not slept well for days and investigating cases back to back, I couldn't believe that someone as capable as Shin Siai could make such a huge mistake. They tell you to die, so you obediently follow? I press forward step by step. What if I tell you not to die? Will you listen? Shin Si's eyes flickered. I knew my words had struck a chord, so I struck while the iron was hot. Shin Siai, in officialdom you speak without fear of error and uphold justice, yet in this matter, you are abetting and magnifying a mistake. To undermine the authority of a just man, the way of an official contradicts the precepts of your clan. Shin Siai, what do you plan to do?
Speak.
I grasped his wrist and raised the poisoned wine. Behind me, the old servant finally couldn't hold back and stepped forward, saying, Master Jiang, who in this world cares about the reasons? They only look at the results. The fact is that our master's improper behavior got him involved in this corruption case. Trembling, she handed a white silk sash to Shin Siai, begging the young master to preserve the Shin family's honorable name. I snatched the sash and threw it aside. I ask for the reason. There are plenty of people in this world who ask for reasons and seek the truth. Only you ignorant, murderous fools are blind and heartless, pressing so fiercely. The old servant was so angry, she could barely breathe. but I still drove her out of the prison unceremoniously. I summoned the jailer and showed him the emperor's golden decree. No Shin family member is allowed to visit here. If anything happens to Shin Ci before the case is resolved, I will hold you accountable. After instructing the jailer, Shin Ci was still standing there with downcast eyes, his expression unreadable. I stepped forward. Shin Ci, you are an upright official. I don't believe you never doubted that the Shin family's actions were wrong. He raised his hand, and stains of poisoned wine still marked his wrist. I offered him a handkerchief, but he stared blankly and refused to take it. I could only sigh, took his hand, and wiped away the poisoned wine bit by bit with the cloth. Shin Ci, what you suspect is wrong. Those who wish for your death are a group of decrepit old men and women, rotten to the core, a pack of corrupt officials blinded by greed, unable to tell right from wrong. Demanding you die for your innocence is itself a fallacy. If everyone in the world had to use death to prove their integrity and defend their honor, then what need would there be for me, for you, for the Court of Judicial Review? When commoners are wronged, they know to seek the authorities. Yet the Shun family, a century-old noble house, would resort to dying to prove innocence. This is utterly foolish. As an investigating censor, someone like you and someone like me should stand together to challenge these injustices, to tear off the masks hidden in the shadows. We were both born for fairness. With that, I stuffed the handkerchief into his palm. Suddenly, I realized something was off about this cloth. I had left in a hurry and seemed to have grabbed the one Yun Jian gave me. I was about to discreetly take it back, but that bastard Shin Ci refused to let go, so I had to give up. I'll take it back next time. Before leaving, I patted his shoulder and said, Shin Ci, wait for me. Within 7 days, I will find out the truth of the case and clear your name. After walking a long way, I turned back and saw Shin Ci still watching me. I waved at him and then walked out of the censorate prison for good. Outside the prison, it was drizzling, and Yan Yunjing stood at the end of the corridor. He was holding a black umbrella. As he looked over, the red-beaded copper coin earring beneath his ear brushed against his jade-colored neck and swung around. It suddenly reminded me that Yun Jian also liked accessories like that, only more flamboyant. All done, he raised an eyebrow as I approached. Yes, now to the Jingyuan Money House. The two of us stepped into the rain together. I touched the rainwater on my official robe, pained by the sight, and shamelessly squeezed under Yan Yunjing's umbrella. Your Highness is so benevolent, coming in the rain specially to pick up your humble servant. But before I could finish my flattery, a hard object was thrust in front of me, a green umbrella. Stay away from me, with that stench of prison filth. I gritted my teeth, opened my umbrella, and didn't bother arguing with him. As I walked down the street, a carriage sped past, and I saw the filthy water about to splash up. With quick eyes and nimble hands, I held my umbrella sideways to shield a young woman in front of me. Miss, be careful. The woman thanked me repeatedly. Turning back, I saw Yan Yunjing covered in mud, grinning through clenched teeth.
Jian Hui.
I hurried over with concern. I tried to comfort him. Your Highness, it's fine. I don't mind you. You can stand a bit closer to me. While investigating the case, I stayed at the Hanlin Academy for several consecutive days, but still faced an assassination attempt. Fortunately, I had the foresight to have the 7th Prince's faction strengthen the guards. On the 4th day of the case, I uncovered the key evidence, Shan Ci's uncle.
He claimed he was ordered by Shin Ci.
That bribe money only passed through his account before he used it to buy several antiques and jewelry, which were then secretly shipped elsewhere. That night, we approached a 3-courtyard mansion next to a bustling area in the capital. Yan Yunjing and I sneaked in under the cover of darkness and quietly crept into the bedroom. Just as I discovered an antique vase involved in the case and was about to investigate further, footsteps came from outside the door. Yan Yunjing and I had already found out that this place was occupied by a woman called Qin Yang, but now 2 sets of footsteps were heard outside. Quickly, Yan Yunjing and I hid in a nearby wardrobe. The wardrobe was full of women's gaudy, perfumed clothes, and Yan Yunjing, who happened to be unable to stand the scent, frowned, wishing he could spit out the tea he had drunk today. But now there was no room for him to act out. The door was pushed open, and Qin Yang and the Minister of War, Li Ji, entered intimately. I quickly grabbed a piece of women's clothing to cover his mouth and nose. Yan Yunjing's face changed, and he looked at me angrily. I just shook my hand and mouthed to him, "Bear with it." Yan Yunjing was never one to suffer in silence. Jiang Rui, on the other hand, was gleefully enjoying her freedom across from him, piling her clothes beside him and even muffling his mouth with another woman's garment. Utterly infuriating. Yan Yunjing disdainfully tossed aside that peach-colored dress, grabbed Jiang Rui's flailing hand, and pressed it against his own mouth and nose to block out those piercing scents. As he looked at Jiang Rui's stunned face, he suddenly felt less miserable. How amusing! He momentarily forgot his aversion to touching others, pressing the tip of his nose against her palm. She didn't use any perfume, whether because she disliked it or was too stingy to buy it, he didn't know. Her palms, dotted with thin calluses, smelled of nothing but paper and ink. Yan Yunjing didn't dislike it, though he forgot that Jiang Rui was never one to be easily manipulated. Taking advantage of the moment as she stretched her body, she suddenly pressed her hand down hard. The posture seemed intent on flattening Yan Yunjie's nose, but Yan Yunjie moved quickly, lifting his face slightly. Jiang Rui's hand pressed firmly against his lips, her fingers just grazing his earlobe. The earring swayed lightly with a slight movement, gently brushing the delicate red jade beads and Yan Yunjie's earlobe. What crime is it to slight a prince? A warning bell rang in my mind. I dared not move anymore. On the other side of the door, the sticky sounds from the bed rose and fell, but inside the wardrobe it was so silent that not even breathing could be heard. After a moment, the noise outside stopped. Li Ji, holding Qin Nyang, said lazily, "I'll buy you a new one in a couple of days." Qin Nyang coquettishly said, "That's 60,000 taels of military pay. How much did you give me, and how much did you give that yellow-faced wife of yours at home? It's all yours." As she spoke, they started again. Seeing that I wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon, I decided to meticulously analyze the chain of evidence I had gathered so far. After reviewing it and finding no holes, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Tonight, I would meet His Majesty and present the case. After the two finally left, I moved my body and found it so stiff that even my wrists couldn't turn properly. Struggling to get up, I wobbled and leaned toward Yan Yunjing. Startled, he quickly reached out to catch me, but I was quick and propped myself against the wardrobe. "Your Highness, go quickly. I need to report to His Majesty," I said hurriedly, urging him to leave. "What's the rush?" he asked lazily, lifting his eyes. Stepping out of the wardrobe, he said, "Shin Siai won't die for a while." I looked at him in confusion. Just a few days ago, who is it that wanted me to stay up all night reading case files? Yan Yunjing, knowing he was in the wrong, didn't argue and took me to climb out the window. But when we were about to leave the mansion, we found that the dog hole we used to enter had been blocked. Yan Yunjing was skilled in Qinggong. "What about me then?" I said, looking at the dog hole, wanting to cry but having no tears. After a long silence, I saw that Yan Yunjing hadn't flown out ahead but was standing by my side with his arms crossed, as if waiting for something. I rolled my eyes and put on an ingratiating smile. "Your Highness." He let out a laugh. There was a hint of smugness in her tone, her earrings swaying. "How about this? I rub my hands together. Can you help me move that stone over? I have nothing to stand on to climb up." Yan Yunjie's smile froze on the spot. "Your Majesty, according to my investigation into the messenger mentioned in the secret letter, although he insists he was instructed by Shin Siai. On the date mentioned in the letter, he was out enjoying himself with a courtesan and had no opportunity to commit the crime. As for the whole case, it was a massive frame-up meticulously planned by Minister of War Li Ji to cover up his embezzlement, satisfy his own desires, and form cliques for personal gain. Because Shin Siai, as an imperial censor, had repeatedly impeached Li Ji harbored hatred and deliberately framed him. With the conclusion of this case, no minister at court can any longer question my promotion of your position. Hamlin Academy editor Jiang Rui, with a wise heart and iron guts, sees everything clearly. In the case of the missing grain transport silver, he has eliminated traitors, cleared grievances, and rendered meritorious service to the state. I am deeply gratified. His talents are worthy of great use. By special decree, promote him to Chief Magistrate of the Court of Judicial Review, reward him with 1,000 silver taels and 100 bolts of palace silk, confer upon him the title of Kaduwai, and permit him to present memorials before the throne. I hope you'll not disappoint my expectations. Upholding impartiality, careful in sentencing, a model for all officials. Promoted and wealthy, contentedly drinking alone under the moonlight, yet a figure lurks on the wall, peeping. Your Highness, still not used to using the main gate? In times of triumph, even this killing god seems adorable. Yan Yunzheng leaped down from the wall, snatched a cup of wine from me, and drank. When I arrived, I saw the Shin mansion was quite lively. Shin Xi knelt in the ancestral hall, beaten until his skin was split. I finished another cup, my expression unchanged. Lord Shin is truly pitiable, I sighed. Noticing Yan Yunzheng staring at me, I stared back bluntly. With the liquor rising, I was rarely so direct. Your Highness, I only agreed to investigate the case and protect him. I didn't agree to also save the hearts of those pitiful moral defenders in his family. Yan Yunjing shook his head, let out a soft laugh, opened another jar of wine, and pushed it toward me. I didn't say anything, just sighing that you're really fine material for an official. I toasted him. Thanks for your kind words. Before leaving, he swiped a bottle of wine from me. I stopped halfway and turned back to remind her. Are you really not worried? Because of a few words from you, she found the courage to overthrow the doctrines she grew up with, and now she's standing alone against a house full of relatives. My lips curled into a playful, languid smile, and my narrow eyes held a gleam of insight, as if I were merely watching a show. I let out a scoff and ignored him. The empty wine bottles in my hand scattered across the stone table, jostling with dozens of others already there. No kin, no relation, what's that to me? When His Majesty handed out rewards today, he asked about my parents. I had foreseen this back in Chongling and already had Yunjian separate my household registration, claiming to outsiders that I was an orphan. Those who despise and abandon me, how could they share in my glory? Yan Yunzheng truly misjudged me. I am utterly heartless. From the dingiest street in Chongling to where I am today, my rise has never relied on unfounded kindness. Tipsy with wine, I rested my head carelessly on the stone table and looked up at the sky, a canopy of stars. Gradually, that last glance Shin Xi cast my way when I visited him in Tai prison surfaced in my mind, like an ancient, unyielding stone. A crack was pried open in it. It turned out that inside was not stone, but a faintly beating heart. Glimpsed the world's redemption through a crack, daring not to advance for fear the hard stone would shatter, leaving no place to hide, unwilling to retreat because I had already glimpsed the myriad scenes of this world. I suddenly remembered I still had a handkerchief with him. I licked my teeth and sighed deeply. Forget it. I'll get it back with interest later. Shu Chong, prepare the carriage, late at night. Shin family ancestral hall. Clansmen and villagers held torches, dyeing almost the entire small courtyard red. It was unclear whether they were illuminating the night or making a sacrifice to ignorance. Shin Xi's outer robe was stripped away. She wore only a black inner garment as she knelt before the ancestral hall. A trace of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. She had clearly endured several lashes. Old Madame Shen held a blood-stained long whip, her expression cold and majestic. This lash is for your disobedience to the family's decision and defiance of orders. That is unfilial. This lash is for your selfishness, cowardice, and harm to the family. This lash is for forgetting your original heart and betraying the ancestral teachings. Today I will purge the family for the Shin family and beat this unworthy descendant to death. With each lash falling on Shin Xi's back, the seeping blood already showed a dark stain through his black clothes, yet he never bent his back. The aging old lady, panting, her eyes sharp. Do you know you're wrong? Shin Xi finally moved, slightly straightening his kneeling posture. His gaze swept over the honored seats above, the surrounding clan members, and finally landed on old Madame Shin's face. Grandmother, your grandson knows no wrong, knows not how to repent. Old Madame Shin, enraged, struck a heavy lash on Shin Xi's shoulder blade, blood splattered, but Shin Xi only let out a muffled grunt and then made no sound. When you entered the court as an official, what did I tell you? The Shin family has gradually declined over 100 years. You are the last hope for the Shin family's revival, and you must never do anything rebellious and shameful. Now, by doing this, are you worthy of our Shin ancestors? Are you worthy of those elders who died for the Shin family's pure reputation? Today you are so cowardly and afraid of death. All my teaching you since childhood was in vain, day and night telling you the story of your grandfather, who died spilling blood before the hall to preserve his pure reputation." Old Madam Shin spoke earnestly, her eyes filled with disappointment. "Grandmother, your words were not in vain. I now understand." Shin Si interrupted her softly. "Since childhood, I never understood why grandfather had to die when he had a chance to defend himself. No matter how many times you told me, grandmother, I still didn't understand. But now I do. Grandfather was wrong. If everyone has to die to prove their innocence, then what use am I as an investigating censor? What use are the investigative agencies in the imperial court? You." Madame Shen was so furious her body swayed. The maid hurried to support her, but she pushed her away. "Our Shin family has always been a family of pure integrity, yet we've produced such an obstinate and unrepentant wretch as you. I'll beat you to death today to comfort your grandfather's spirit in heaven." She put all her strength into the heavy whip as it fell, as if the person before her was not her own grandson but an enemy from a past life. Shin Si did not dodge. He watched the whip fall, just like so many times before when a single misstep had led to severe punishment. Within the Shin family, no one had ever had an easy time. Every person held their breath and guarded their heart, afraid of making a mistake. He more than anyone. The Shin family had destroyed him, yet they had also raised him. He could not rid himself of the blood and bones nurtured by the Shin family. Even if he saw clearly and understood, he could only watch himself die. But this time, the whip did not fall. Before the shocked and furious gaze of the clan elders arrived, a pair of hands, calloused yet seemingly capable of shielding everything and lifting all burdens, appeared. Shin Si looked up and saw the crimson official robe of the minister of the Dali Temple, a woman's face both dignified and tinged with 3 parts of anger. Using private punishment against a court official who gave the Shin family such boldness. Jiang Rui had found him once again before the agony could crush him. And who do I think it was? So, it's the newly appointed minister of the Dali Temple. This is a family matter of the Shin family, and we are applying the Shin family's own rules, not private punishment. Please, Your Excellency, do not meddle in other people's business. Otherwise, even if this old woman brings the case before the emperor, I have my reasons, Old Madam Shin said sternly. Then please, Old Madam, share those reasons with me as well, Jiang Rui replied, releasing the whip but standing firmly in front of Shin Si. Old Madam Shin was stunned, never expecting a junior to have such audacity as to barge into her ancestral hall alone. Even after being warned, they showed no fear, instead questioning her reasoning. If she couldn't answer, then I, as the official, would report to the emperor first. I sneered, a flicker of disgust in my eyes. The canal transport case was closed. The imperial decree had been issued. The injustice against Shin Si has been proclaimed to the world. Lord Shen has just received the imperial favor in court today, yet upon returning to your Shin family, he is subjected to family punishment. Old Madam Shin, are you questioning the judgment of the 3 judicial departments or the emperor's decision? Seeing that the old woman was left speechless by my question, I frowned. Just the first point, and she had nothing to say. Boring. I turned and swept my gaze over all the assembled Shin clan members. Sons and grandsons are wronged. You did not lend your full support, fearful of being implicated, eagerly sending him a white silk and poisoned wine. Now that the emperor has restored his innocence, you show your ugly faces again, accusing him of being a coward who feared death and abandoned his family. May I ask every one of you here, if you were not afraid of death, why did you abandon him back then in the name of the family? Each old face, every rotting corpse is vulnerable. Under the influence of 3 parts alcohol, I grew more and more impassioned. Finally, I said to Shin Si, who was still kneeling, Shin Si, do you see clearly? There are no family or clan members here, only puppets whose souls have been devoured by empty reputation. I reached out to him. Are you still going to kneel to these people? My hand was grasped. It was a straight, slender hand with distinct knuckles, the back stained with streaks of blood, carrying the chill of early autumn. He gripped my hand firmly, then stood up, covered in wounds and blood. He walked to his grandmother and kowtowed heavily 3 times. Grandmother, I have never forgotten what you taught me in my youth. But now, these things can no longer convince me. I have always adhered to family rules, taking pure stream as my guide and moral integrity as my backbone, close to the people as my courage. Today, I realize that these are nothing but tools to whitewash the family and seize power. Please forgive me for not being able to agree, nor can I blind myself and be buried here. These three bows thank you for your upbringing and teaching. From now on, I, Shen Xiai, sever all ties with the Shen family. Old Madame Shen tightened her grip on her walking stick, her face growing paler. Immediately, someone in the ancestral hall couldn't sit still and stood up, speaking harshly. Sever ties? Shen Xiai, what a bold claim. The Shen family helped you reach this point, raised you until now. Every item on your body was paid for with Shen family silver. Not to mention your current position as investigating censor. How could it be possible without the support of the elders in the clan? Old Madame Shen's face darkened, but she did not speak in his defense. Truly, a group of utterly corrupt and utterly cold-hearted people. But before I could say a word of mockery, Shen Xiai lowered his eyes, his voice deep and cold, without a trace of fear. I entered officialdom through the 3 provincial examinations and 3 palace examinations. Each time as the top candidate, I never cheated or falsified. My scholarly honors were personally approved by the Son of Heaven and conferred by the imperial court. My official position was earned through diligent service and pleading for the people. He paused, his sharp gaze fixed directly on the elder who had raised the objection. Third granduncle, you are now 56 years old. You should remember that back then, the entire Shen family was mired in crisis, with no strength left to handle complex affairs, let alone add bricks to my official career. It was only by relying on the achievements of your descendants that you barely managed to survive and catch your breath. Now, however, you begin to confuse right and wrong. I listened and sneered inwardly, an elder who does not act with dignity. As for the clothes on my body, they are all paid for by my own salary. I have never used a single silver of the Shen family. He spoke, but hesitated for a moment, then took off the brocade crown used to bind his hair and placed it on the table before him. His ink-black hair cascaded down like a dark wave. To be disheveled in public was hardly a virtue befitting a gentleman, let alone for Shen Xiai, who valued propriety so heavily. The only thing was that this crown was a gift from my grandmother upon my coming of age. Today I return it. No one has reason to stop me anymore. Shen Xiai turned and left the Shen estate without looking back. The moonlight was beautiful tonight. I swept my gaze over the Shen family with some boredom, only to see that Lady Shen could no longer hold back. She tapped her cane twice, stepped forward 2 paces, and called out urgently, "Xiai, are you truly going to be bewitched by this barbarian woman?" Shen Xiai paused in his steps. I thought he might soften and turn around, but he looked back with a cold, gloomy expression in his eyes, without a hint of softness in his voice. Lady Shen, watch your words. The two faced off, the tension palpable. I press my forehead and close my eyes. How is this wine so strong? It leaves one so agitated. The moment I open my eyes, a trace of drunken intoxication tinged them. Just then, Shen Xiai turned to look at me. I raised an eyebrow slightly and reached out a hand. He tightened his jaw. Those hands, covered in whip marks and blood, were offered for me to take his wrist. As I led him out of the Shen residence with a swagger, old Madame Shen's gloomy voice came from behind. "Zhang Rui, you're just a 5th-rank minister of the Dali Temple, yet you dare to openly oppose my Shen family?" I lifted my eyes slightly, turned back, and swept my gaze over the shadowy figures in the ancestral hall, my eyes gliding past those unremarkable faces, a trace of cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. I couldn't even be bothered to reply, turning around to leave. 100-year ancestral hall, 100 years of moth-eaten, paper tiger that puts up a bluff, dragging out its existence by sacrificing its descendants, yet unwilling to admit its own decline. A bunch of fools. The night wind was cool, blowing away the rising tipsiness, thinning it. After walking far from the Shen residence, the wildness of alcohol and the thrill of a hero helping the weak faded. I gritted my teeth slightly, sobering up a bit. This time it's purely a losing business. The Shen family is in decline now, but a dying camel is still bigger than a horse. Especially a family that is so obsessed with etiquette that they would tie the Book of Rights to their forehead. If I were clear-headed, I would never have gotten involved in such a mess. Anything that doesn't benefit me must not be done. What kind of spell am I under? I turned slightly, and the person who had been obediently holding my hand happened to look over. The moonlight was bright. The silver radiance covering the sky surpassed 1,000 threads of heavenly silk, yet it could not outshine the person before me by even a fraction. His face was like white jade, his figure like a slender bamboo. In the past, when encountering this imperial censor, even knowing he had such good looks, I dared not look too much. After all, a few extra glances might land my name in his sharp-tongued memorial. An old stickler, a walking measure of law and order, buttons fastened to the top, not a single hair out of place. Just like the quiet, fragrant ebony in the ancestral temple, clinging to pain, drawing close to cold, what was once dignified and strict is now disheveled and wretched. Robes torn, stained with blood, ink-black hair draped over shoulders, a whip mark bleeding at the temple, yet like a cluster of red plums on a jade vase, a brilliance hard to bear. In those eyes that were always as cold and still as a deep pool, now faint ripples appear, staring inexplicably at me holding his hand. Jiang Rui, thank you. Looking at that face, I find it impossible to speak harsh words. Everyone has a heart that loves beauty and pities. Oh well, I'll reclaim this favor from him 1,000-fold later. Lightly releasing my grip on his hand, I rub my palm and smile. Thank me for what? My teasing tone made this solemn censor take it seriously. Thank you for coming today. He bowed to me with great sincerity, but I pressed his palm to stop the motion, like a precisely designed instrument that had played for millennia, abruptly halted with a missing key. His eyes wide, showing bewilderment and helplessness. I stepped forward, pressing down his tall shadow under the moonlight. Her tone was soft, like flowing moonlight. Shenxi, could I truly stand by and watch you sink into darkness unmoved? It wasn't a question, but it inexplicably made Shenxi pause in her breathing for a moment. Her dark eyes trembled, utterly unsettled. Seeing this, instead of retreating, I stepped forward, a faint, fearless smile spreading at the corners of my mouth. How could I bear that? In the past, I'd often silently curse Yan Yundun for being born with a streak of malice, but I never expected that I was no better. Under the influence of wine and women, anyone could be saved or teased. Thinking of this, I immediately straightened up. Tonight, I truly indulged too much. Hastily adopting a proper demeanor, I put on an expression of goodwill that was hard to distinguish as genuine or false. Lord Shen, you're injured. Would you like to come to my residence first to get that treated? Just as I said this, Shenxi's guards drove a carriage near from afar. I have a house on the outskirts of the city. I won't trouble Lord Jiang, he said as he bid me farewell, swiftly boarding the carriage. His movements were so fast that I only caught a glimpse of a dark corner. Lord Jiang, thank you for today's help. Before leaving, Shenxi's guard cast a rather suspicious glance my way. I maintained the posture of an upright, good person, completely unyielding. On the way back, I suddenly remembered that if Shenxi were to impeach me in court tomorrow for my improper conduct of teasing him today, I would be in trouble. That fellow has always been strict in separating public and private matters. Last time, his mentor's nephew, driven by lust, stopped a respectable woman on the street. The man brought letters from his mentor and pleaded repeatedly, but Shenxi still showed no mercy. I immediately clenched my teeth, feeling a bit guilty. However, in the following month, I was never impeached by this rigorous and principled imperial censor. There were others who wanted to impeach me. After solving several major cases in a row, everything seemed to be improving. When I went shopping on the street, the men whispering behind me about that female official probably got her position through connections gradually fell silent. Several sturdy and lovely little girls were led by their mothers to give me a large, perfectly round melon. Their mothers taught them, study hard, and when you grow up, you'll become as formidable as Lord Jiang. Freshly picked flowers, clean eggs, and several low-level boatmen implicated in the grain transport case, after being exonerated and released from prison, came with their families to thank me. What's more, in folk tales, I was mythologized as a divine detective with a third eye. In official circles, several arrogant officials who used to only snort coldly at me, now when they had no choice but to face me, He used to perform the cupped fist salute perfunctorily, but now he calls out Minister Jiang from afar, then walks up to make a standard and cautious bow. Resources and documents that I used to have to beg for multiple times now pass all approvals within a few incense sticks time and land on my desk. The first time I stepped into the Dali Temple duty office, a pot of my beloved purple bamboo had been deliberately placed on the windowsill. I gently brushed my fingertip over the tender leaves, and the corner of my mouth curled into a faint, ambiguous smile. Aren't they always saying that the people of Dali Temple are rough-handed and lack discernment? Turns out they can be quite attentive and perceptive. But it's only halfway up the mountain. Beneath the surface calm, there are hidden currents. Some spread rumors that my investigation of the water transport case was driven by ulterior motives or a desire for profit. Others claim that my entry into officialdom as a woman is an attempt to disrupt the court order. Those who wreak havoc on the legitimate succession, some even blamed the Jianghan floods and the people's destitution on me, saying I incurred heaven's wrath. Making groundless accusations and turning truth upside down. Who is running out of tricks is obvious, without further elaboration. The Li family, heavily hit by this canal transport case, escaped further entanglement only thanks to the unborn male child in Consort Shu's womb and the fourth prince. Even after the case concluded, they have remained obedient until now. Is the fourth prince truly as noble-hearted and benevolent as the rumors say? Is Consort Shu really without any scheming, soft-hearted and merciful? I swirled a teacup in my hand, lost in thought, until Shin Si, who had invited me for tea, walked up to me, snapping me back to reality. The next moment, I was dazzled, how utterly different he looked. I rarely saw him outside of his official robes. Today, he wore a sky-blue Hangzhou silk straight-front robe, cinched with a jade belt, his posture tall and upright, his black hair pinned up with a simple mutton-fat jade hairpin. He looked like a young master who had stepped out of a book, but it was so unlike his usual self, like a small flower suddenly placed atop a piece of steady, fragrant ebony. Shin Si drank tea with lowered eyes for a long time, but in the end, unable to bear my gaze, he set down the teacup. Yet I saw that not a single drop of tea had been drunk. What's wrong? I touched my hair, quickly averted my eyes, and let out a dry laugh. Perhaps it's because he left the Shun family. His environment changed, and his style of dress changed along with it. I'm just not used to seeing it. Returning to the main topic, I cleared my throat. Lord Shin, what business do you have with me? He lifted his eyes, those jade-like orbs filled with profound apology and sincerity. The recent rumors in the court and among the people were spread by the Shin family. I have already dealt with several rumor-mongers according to the law. Give me 3 days, and I will catch and severely punish all the instigators involved. You have been implicated because of me. I waved my hand and smiled casually. Since I chose this path, rumors and risks are no more than rain in the 4 seasons, a trivial matter. Lord Shin, did you come to see me today only to say you're sorry? Shin Si froze. The man who was always the most direct was now flustered by my straightforwardness. He took out an elegant brocade box from his sleeve and handed it to me. My heart stirred, a hint of delight creeping into my eyes. Could it be that handkerchief of Yun Jian's that I left at his place last time? Perfect, I wouldn't even have to ask. He's returned it on his own. Grinning, I took it and opened it directly, only to be startled again. This man of utmost propriety even started to blush slightly. In the box lay a quietly placed inkstone. My smile froze for a moment. This is a heated inkstone. As it's now the year-end and winter nights are cold, you often stay up late reviewing official documents and making notes. This heated inkstone will make things a bit better. Is this? I hesitated. A New Year's gift, he said openly, his eyes filled with sincerity. It was like a clear breeze from the bamboo grove and mountain forest, yet it felt unbearably hot to me. The heated inkstone in my hand burned me even before hot water was poured into it. Thank you, I said, holding it, my mind in a jumble of thoughts, letting out a dry chuckle. But at that moment, the originally pleasant sound of the zither outside suddenly hit a jarring note, and a strange smell crept into the private room. My head began to grow heavy and dizzy. My expression hardened as I quickly drenched a handkerchief with tea and covered my nose and mouth. Shin Si's eyes were already clouded with confusion. I wanted to do the same for him, but had no spare handkerchief, so I could only reach into his robe. Who would have thought the fool would think I was trying to seduce him? He grabbed my hand at first, his face full of shock. Just as I was about to explain, he silently loosened his grip and turned his head away, saying, "No." He gritted his teeth and said, "It must be done, even if I say no." But I forcibly pulled out a handkerchief, wet it, and covered his mouth and nose. Then I hurried to the door to check the bolt. Sure enough, it had been locked from the outside, and the windows were already glued shut. I struggled to break a corner of the window, immediately took out a signal flare from my bosom, and shot it outside. That was a life-saving item Yan Yunjing had left me during the canal transport case. I hadn't had the heart to use it then, but now it came in handy. Since these people intended to kill me, there was no way they'd rely solely on poison. The next moment, the door was slammed open, and several men in black burst in. But before they could get close, they were greeted by a handful of purple powder. Seizing the opportunity, Shen Xiai grabbed a long sword and finished off one of them. The assassins who came were all skilled in martial arts. They only hesitated for a moment when faced with my poison powder. Although I had some strength, I wasn't skilled in martial arts. Shen Xiai was quite capable in combat, but having inhaled too much poison gas earlier, it was already a struggle for her to stand before me and hold her own against several enemies. Before long, the assassins stabbed her in the abdomen and leg. One assassin seized the opportunity to dart over and strike at me, startling Shen Xiai. She tried to shield me with her body, but I pushed her away. I grabbed the inkstone she had given me and smashed it against the assassin's temple. The sound of the bone cracking was crisp. Even as a child, I could run while carrying 2 water jars. No mad bull or wild horse could ever overpower me, let alone when I had a weapon in hand. Killing a person with a blow was as easy as turning my hand. The people in the room were all stunned. I snatched the great sword from the dead assassin, and though my technique was unrefined, I relied on sheer brute strength to shield the injured Shen Xiai behind me. I smeared the newly mixed poison powder onto the blade's tip. Wherever the blade cut, the flesh turned into a pool of soft tissue. The assassins in the private room saw they were outmatched and, with a hardened resolve, actually lit the kerosene and retreated. The oil spilled onto the floor, and the flames spread instantly. Mixing with the residual poison gas in the room, it even produced a series of explosive sounds. Thick smoke and poisonous fumes nearly overwhelmed all willpower. Just then, a rope soaked with tea was thrown over me, and Shen Xiai shoved me out of the fire line. "Jiang Rui, hurry while the fire hasn't spread yet, get out quick." I frowned at the wounds on his thigh and abdomen gushing blood. He was deeply poisoned and stabbed in the abdomen and leg, unable to move. Forcing him to come along would only be a burden. I turned and left. Shen Xiai sat in place, watching that resolute-eyed woman turn and leave without hesitation. A faint, relieved smile touched his lips. Fortunately, she took his inkstone with her. He was once a tree born in a rotten, lifeless place, uprooted by her and taken to see a land of light and flowers. Such a pity to involve her, but luckily she is unharmed. Shen Xiai pulled from his bosom the handkerchief she had once left with him, a guardian of the way, whose life was open and upright. But the most pitiful and shameful private desire was to keep this handkerchief ungloriously, clutching it tightly. In the final moments of his life, he gently rubbed the embroidered corner, the exquisitely crafted little cloud. Jiang Rui liked clouds, so he had personally carved a cloud onto the inkstone he gave her. Shen Xiai closed his eyes, waiting quietly, only for what came faster than the flames. It was Jiang Rui who had returned. She was soaked through, holding a large hammer in her hands. She rushed over and smashed the sealed window again and again. "Hurry, move to the window and wait for me. Once I break it open, we'll jump down together." With the fire at their brows, there was no time to waste. As I frantically smashed the window with the hammer, Shen Xiai leaned against the wall, step by step, moving to my side. Downstairs, Yan Yunjung had already arrived with his troops, evacuating the crowd and ordering the fire to be put out. He dismounted in a single leap, his brow furrowed, and in an instant spotted a killer disguised as a civilian in the crowd. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded, "Where are they?" "Yan Yunjung." I quickly called out his name as I helped the injured Shen Xiai up and passed him over. He was steadily caught by several soldiers and taken for treatment. The next second, the flames surged up. I was about to jump down, but Yan Yunjing flew up directly and brought me down steadily. The moment I stood firm, I couldn't help asking, "Why didn't you say earlier you could use lightness skill to carry someone? It would have saved Shen Xiai all that hassle." Yan Yunjing said seriously, "He's too heavy, I can't carry him." I had placed tracking poison powder on the fleeing assassin, and following the trail, I found him, only to discover these were all mountain villagers. They were usually simple and devoid of killing intent, yet their bodies clearly bore traces of strict training. On the second day of interrogation, these people all committed suicide en masse, leaving behind confused wives and children. With the dead as witnesses, there was nothing to investigate. Life returned to its usual calm, except for someone who appeared on the windowsill like a ghost. Now rumors outside say that Jiang Rui, the chief of the Grand Court, is deeply infatuated with Shen Xiai, fearless of danger in reviewing major cases for him, and full of righteous indignation, challenging the entire Shen family ancestral hall alone. Later, he even risked his life to rescue people from a fire. A hand wearing a silver fish ring gently lifted the neatly stacked files in front of me. The newcomer's tone was light, as if discussing something amusing, as their fingertips slid over. In the silent air, a faint scent of blood seeped out, as if an interrogation or a chase had just ended. The booklet written for the two of you is selling like hotcakes. Now the capital's writers stay up all night churning out copies, but still can't meet the demand. The brave, love-seeking female official in a high position and the restrained, old-fashioned gentleman. TSK. He pulled out a flimsy little book from who knows where, one that looked utterly improper, and began to appreciate it right in front of me. "Shen Xiai, would you be willing to come with me?" This guy pitched his voice and started reciting the sickly sweet lines from the book, making my forehead veins bulge. I whipped my hand back, pulled out a fire striker from my sleeve, and flung it at Yan Yunjing's booklet. The corner caught a spark and burst into flames. But Yan Yunjing didn't dodge or flinch, letting the booklet burn clean to his fingertips, revealing his face as striking as a ghost's. Seeing me stare, he curled the corner of his mouth. "Director Jiang, if it were you, I'd follow you to the ends of the earth." His voice shed its pretentious disguise, like a demon's seductive whispers. I just laughed in anger, seeing through his vulgar taste. "Your Highness truly deserves to be of noble birth. With such a silver tongue and such sentiment, you could earn extra silver as a storyteller." I sneered, and while he was off guard, I swiftly snatched the file from under his hand, causing him to fumble for a moment. "Your Highness's tone sounds as if you can't wait to take Shenxi's place and elope with Jiang Rui in the book," I said sarcastically. Yan Yunjing, however, was not annoyed. He curled the corner of his mouth, propped his hand on the table, and leaned half his body forward. "That depends on whether our Lord Jiang is willing. This man is truly too flirtatious, his words frivolous, yet in his narrowed eyes there was not a trace of affection." I had nothing to say, and stepped back a little, speaking seriously. "Your Highness, visiting late at night. What is it?" Yan Yunjing blew off the ash on his fingertips, his demon-like eyes flickering with a hint of coldness. "I just came to tell you. I have a way to find out who is behind this assassination." I raised an eyebrow, somewhat surprised. "What way?" "Bone pattern goo." I gasped, a chill creeping up my spine. A common goo insect used by the southern barbarians for interrogation and tracking. This sinister and vicious technique is considered a top-tier sorcery. I had only ever read about this kind of voodoo in ancient books. It should have long been banned for defying the laws of heaven and thus lost. How could Yan Yunjing know about it and actually use it? In contrast to my shock and suspicion, Yan Yunjing, who had just proposed this method, remained calm and composed, not a trace of emotion in his eyes, as if the one who suggested killing people for their bones and grinding them into powder to raise bugs was not him. Seeing my expression, he chuckled. "Just a method I stumbled upon while on the march. Interrogating prisoners requires certain methods." I shook my head. Who else could the prisoner be? No need to test me. So far, I've only gotten in the way of two factions. Li Ji is dead, but behind him are Consort Shu and the Fourth Prince. Which of them is an easy target? As our eyes met, a flash of understanding passed between us. Yan Yunjing lightly knocked on the table. "Then what do you think of him?" My gaze flickered. Then I said firmly, "I am loyal only to His Majesty. The world is vast. There are more than just two tigers. Declaring my stance prematurely would be as good as giving up my life. Yen Yunjung looked at me, his pupils gradually turning dark and deep. The sharp blade in his sleeve gleamed with a faint, dark sheen. Just as my hand was about to reach the mechanism under the table, he let out a sneer, pulled a beautifully patterned short blade from his sleeve, slid it across the table toward me, and on the scabbard were engraved the words, Jiang Rui. In your heart, I'm nothing but a ruthless man who would kill to silence those he can't win over. Guiltily, I picked up the short blade and forced a smile. No, not at all. But do you have any idea about your reputation out there? God of Death, Yama King, these are all your titles. Holding the blade, I felt flattered. Your Highness, this is a New Year's gift? He replied curtly, you've helped me quite a bit this year. Consider it a token of my appreciation, and I'm here to tell you something. I've already ordered the case of the Women's Recommendation Bureau to be reopened.
Really?
A flicker of surprise lit up my eyes. This was something Yen Yun had promised me before the canal transport case, but I thought it would take more time. I never expected him to act so quickly. Thinking of this, an idea struck me. Your Highness, is the favor you promised me before still valid? Yen Yunjung was just now threatening me, pushing me aside to occupy my warm chair. Squinting, he looked over suspiciously upon hearing this. You want to use it now? Yes, I need you, Your Highness, to help me pick up someone. At the beginning of spring, the Dali Temple has increased its review of cases. Somehow, this guy Lu Ji was transferred to the Dali Temple as a registrar. Jiang Rui, your heart is so cruel. We haven't seen each other for a year, and you don't welcome me at all. Instead, you send storybooks and snacks to Lu Su every other day. He gritted his teeth and stole all my pastries, stuffing his cheeks full, looking at me resentfully. Spring snow melts, sunlight falling outside the window on the long life braid sticking up behind his ear, golden threads like wisps, like a long-haired little dog accusing its owner of sneaking out to eat. This guy talks as if it wasn't him who came to celebrate the little New Year not long ago, drank 8 jars of my wine, and blew off my roof. Looking at the person in front of me who had just arrived at the Dali Temple and was frowning while organizing files due to unfamiliarity with the work, I sighed lightly. Lu Ji, do you know where the 7th prince has been these days? I was looking for him to verify the identity of the culprit in the assassination case, but I couldn't find him. Recently, I've been handling a Pipa murder case. One of the clues pointed to internal court affairs. I had intended to ask Yen Yunjing about it when we next met, but he had disappeared since our last encounter and hadn't been seen for days. Lu Ji, biting his pen, pondered for a moment and then asked me, "What's the date today?" "The 6th day of the 3rd month." Lu Ji's expression changed. He waved his hand and said, "Well then, he won't be appearing for quite some time. He'll likely only show himself publicly again at the end of the month." When I asked why, he glanced around furtively, then leaned in and whispered, "In the 3rd month, it's the anniversary of his mother's death. She wasn't buried in the imperial mausoleum, but on a mountain in the outskirts. That guy, the 7th prince, goes there every 3rd month to tend her tomb and pays no heed to state affairs." He opened his mouth to say more, but I quickly stuffed a pastry into it. How could I possibly listen to the secrets of the imperial family? That was enough. Yen Yunjing's mother was the infamous consort Qin who had shaken the court back then. She was implicated in espionage and witchcraft. After the incident, all the maids and eunuchs in her palace were executed. Officials who knew the details were tight-lipped, and the records were limited to just a few sparse sentences. The days that followed gradually quieted down. When busy, I spent entire days and nights reviewing cases, and in the capital, I had to drag Lu Ji around everywhere, wearing out my legs. When idle, well, people shouldn't be too idle. When idle, I would see Shin Siai, who had moved in across the street. Since he moved in, his door was never closed. Every time I stepped out, I could see him sitting in the courtyard drinking tea, the flowering trees as clear as a bright day, and the gentlemen as fine as jade. What a coincidence, Lord Jiang. Would you like to come into my residence for a drink? What a coincidence, Lord Jiang. The magnolias in the courtyard are in bloom. Would you like to come and admire them together? What a coincidence, Lord Jiang. Today I acquired a calligraphy and painting by Master Ouyang. Would you like to view it together? On the 16th such coincidence, I was intercepted halfway by Lu Su. Haven't you come to see me all these days? Is it because of him? On the leisurely carriage, Lu Su lowered his eyelashes like small fans, his voice light as dissipating smoke, revealing no emotion. Yet the moment he raised his eyes, the flowing light shattered inch by inch. "I've made you feel lonely," I asked with a smile. "Next time you want to see me, tell Lu Ji, and I'll come to you." Lu Su pouted, thinking of Lu Ji, and seemed to grow angry again. He wouldn't do it. He wished he could occupy all your time. At the Lu residence, Lu Su played the newly acquired zither, every glance and brow filled with the charm of a beauty, truly a sight to behold, lost in the melody. But a sudden flash of inspiration struck me. "Sewer, can you play the pipa?" The pipa murder case still has no leads. Strange to say, there are very few people in the capital who can play the pipa, let alone master it. The riddle of that score remains unsolved. Lu Su shook his head. "I only knew a little, and later I was forbidden to learn. Far inferior to Brother Yun." Just as she spoke, Lord Lu hurried in from outside the door. He seemed to have some important matter to discuss with the family. I was about to take my leave, but Lu Su insisted I stay in the courtyard and wait for her. Before long, Lu Su emerged from the door, leaning against the frame, her eyes red. She could barely support herself as she stumbled quickly toward me, but ultimately collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "Ruier, something has happened to Brother Yun." "Yan Yunjung." I was startled. In my eyes, Yan Yunjung has always been the type to scheme and plot, full of tricks to harm others. He is highly skilled in martial arts, a prince with illustrious military achievements, and commands the entire Mo Lin Guard. Who could possibly cause him harm? Seeing that Lu Su was already at a loss and told me everything, Lord Lu no longer concealed the truth. The fourth prince set a trap, involving matters of the prince's late mother from years ago, which is why the prince fell into the scheme. Now he has been struck by an arrow at a villa outside the capital. The arrow was coated with a strange poison, and His Highness is in critical condition. Why not return to the palace and summon the imperial physicians? Even though it is a rare poison, the entire imperial hospital is full of talented doctors, including my master's students among them. With so many people, there must be some way to save him. I studied the distraught Lu Su and grasped the key point. The matter of the prince's mother is an absolute taboo for His Majesty. The fourth prince's men must be watching the entire imperial hospital right now. If His Majesty finds out that the prince risked his life again for his mother's sake, he will surely fly into a rage. The fourth prince's plan is to let the prince die from his injuries. The news of the prince's injury must never leak out. At this moment, Lu Su's cold little hand tightly gripped my wrist. She was trembling as she cried, "Heaven is unfair. Why must it always be so cruel to a kind person like Brother Yun?" I forced a slight, ill-timed smile at Yan Yunjia's words. Where did goodness begin? Lord Lu's beard trembled with worry as he paced back and forth, bringing in the secret folk healers he had scoured from the land, over and over. They went in blindfolded and came out blindfolded, shaking their heads and taking their silence fees. Lu Su's face grew paler and paler. I truly feared this beauty would drift away like paper from my arms. "Lord Lu," I sighed, unable in this life to speak a single harsh word to a beauty. The tears falling from my eyes felt as if they would burn my skin. I stopped Lord Lu, who was pacing back and forth, and said, "If you trust me, let me go to that place and see His Highness the Seventh Prince." Blindfolded and taken to what they called a suburban estate, the moment the blindfold was removed, I saw an elegant and quiet courtyard. It appeared deserted, with only a few maids sweeping, yet I felt a chill coming from all directions. I immediately averted my gaze, focusing on my breathing as I carried the medicine chest to Yan Yunjing's side. After a thorough examination, I couldn't help but marvel. No wonder he was a martial artist. Despite being so deeply poisoned, he was still alive. His hand twitched, and before he succumbed to illness, he was determined to argue with me to the end. "You're disappointed?" Those eyes, always tinged with malice and gloom, opened wide. "If you can't cure me, I'll kill you." His ice-cold hand grasped my neck, his pale face closing in as he whispered threats. The illness had brought the underlying brutality in his eyes to the surface. I gently patted the protruding bones of his hand, easily prying his fingers off without exerting much force, and replied perfunctorily, "Understood, understood." He tilted his head slightly to look at me, like a venomous snake in the midst of shedding its skin, more aggressive yet fragile, donning its shed skin to deliberately scare off enemies. But instead, someone took away the snake's shed skin and manually closed its mouth. Feeling a bit put out, he collapsed. After the first round of acupuncture to expel the poison, he could already move his limbs slightly. I was exhausted, seeing stars. It took washing my face to regain some clarity. This time I didn't promise you anything. Why did you come? I drank some tea, then picked up the acupuncture kit and sat over. Then promise me now, I said casually. What should I promise? I grabbed his waistband and laughed. Offer yourself to me.
His face changed.
He grabbed his waistband, disbelief and overwhelming anger in his eyes. Jiang Rui, don't you believe I can make sure you never leave here? I clicked my tongue. TSK, you're indeed sick. Even quarreling lacks your usual skill. So easily provoked. I said nothing, just kept tugging downward. Veins bulged on his forehead. But unfortunately, he was still poisoned. So how could he match me? He could only watch as I pulled his pants down to below his waist. Then I loosened my grip and needled several acupoints on his lower back. You're messing with me? He gritted out. I shook my head. Could you not disturb me, Your Highness? You're very noisy. He was deflated, but said no more. As I worked, every move I made was cautious. A thin sheen of sweat formed on my forehead, and one drop I didn't wipe off in time fell onto the muscle of his lower abdomen. I quickly, furtively wiped it away and stole a glance at him. Fortunately, he was staring blankly out the window. Hey, where are you touching? Oh no, my waist is regaining sensation. After all the acupuncture was done, I was exhausted, my eyelids drooping, my mind groggy. Staggering out the door, Yan Yunjung was leaning against the headboard and rudely called out to me, Jiang Rui, I'm in pain. I was taken aback. Flashes of images appeared in my pace-like mind.
Who had said the same words to me?
I unconsciously followed the tracks of memory, turned back and asked, where does it hurt? Yan Yunjung pointed randomly, a maliciously teasing smile in his eyes. Even the murderous living king of hell could be unreasonable when sick. Here, and here, it all hurts. Dazed, I walked over and grabbed his hand. Does it still hurt now? Seeing how serious I was, his tone softened a bit, and he defended himself. It's a little better now. When I was just hit by the arrow, it hurt terribly. If I had slept enough and was clear-headed, I would have rolled my eyes at him. Who doesn't feel pain when struck by an arrow? But at that moment, my mind was a blur, and the face before me seemed to shift into another, then back again, gradually overlapping in resemblance. A strange guilt stirred in me, and I inexplicably reached out to touch that face, gently blowing on his wound. The person before me stiffened. It doesn't hurt that much anymore. Maybe it was because I turned over too hard just now. I shook my head. No, it's my fault for coming too late, letting you suffer for so long. When I woke up fully rested, it was already the next afternoon. As I opened my eyes, I saw a hazy mist outside the window, pear blossoms like snow, and a slender, graceful figure standing by the window. A small red jade pendant swayed gently by his ear, and in his hand, he held a blood-stained sheet of sheet music. Seeing me awake, he turned around. Jiang Rui, to repay you, how about I explain this piece of music to you? I rolled my eyes and smiled falsely. Such a small matter. No need to trouble your highness. Just kidding. Repaying a life-saving favor with a piece of sheet music? Wouldn't that be a loss? Isn't there anyone else in the capital skilled at the pipa and knowledgeable about music? Yan Yunjung was unhurried, his eyes like a deep pool with faint ripples. I dare say that aside from the murder of this case, only I can understand this score. Jiang Rui. Several court officials have died in this case, and His Majesty's deadline for you to solve it seems to be running short. Damn it. Please enlighten me, Your Highness. I gnashed my teeth with hate, waiting for him to explain. In the end, this guy ordered someone to bring a pipa, sat down, and beckoned me over. I approached hesitantly, but he grabbed my hand and placed it on the strings. Good heavens, he was using my hand to demonstrate the score. Your Highness, I said, pulling back my hand in panic. What if he turned around and accused me of molesting a prince? I didn't want to lose my official post. If you don't play it yourself, how can you know where the score is odd? He raised an eyebrow and gripped my hand tighter. lightly plucking, slowly strumming, pressing and pulling. Every inch of warmth and force from his palm transmitted precisely. The strings trembled, flesh and finger bones dancing together. My hand softened a little. He pried open my claw-like stiff hand and kneaded my finger joints, as if tuning a string. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Very, very wrong. Sensing danger, I snatched my hand back as if my life depended on it, breaking out in cold sweat. I bent over obsequiously and said, "Your subject overstepped." Yen Yunjung watched my movements, gave a cold snort, but didn't seem angry. With an air of nobility, he placed the pipa properly and began to play on his own. A beautiful person is pleasing to the eye no matter what they do. When Yen Yunjung played the pipa, his fingers were incredibly nimble, each vein clearly visible. One couldn't tell if the strings were harder or his veins were. His enchanting, almost demonic face accompanied the decadent melody, the red jade tassels by his ears gently swaying. A seductive and alluring aura seemed to overflow from every trailing note, yet it carried a faint, intangible hint of danger. It was like a mandrake blooming brightly in a dark room, drawing you closer while its poison seeps into your bones. I grew restless. That Yen Yunjung, a living demon who killed without mercy, it was already shocking enough that he could play the pipa, and now he was playing such a decadent, seductive tune like this. Did he think I would feel the same excitement as when I entered the drunken immortal tower to listen to a tavern musician? Or the same calm and harmony as when I listened to Lu Su play the guqin for me? I felt that after hearing this piece, I would soon be on my way to the afterlife. After the piece ended, Yen Yunjung dropped an even more shocking bombshell. After my mother the consort died, that old man banned the playing of pipa at palace banquets. Although the capital had no explicit prohibition, everyone knew his preferences and stopped having their children learn it. The older generation of pipa masters all moved away. I didn't ask. Yen Yunjung, not getting a response from me, set down the pipa and stood up to tell me about the strange points in the score. The case was almost clear now. I quickly made notes to return to Dali Temple and organize them. The wrongly accused suspect, Wanqing Mianzi of Drunken Immortal Pavilion, was still in jail. I had to hurry back to catch the real culprit and rescue her. Upon hearing this, Yen Yunjung raised an eyebrow. That courtesan who was involved in the poisoning case you rescued before? Just as I was taking my leave, Yen Yunjung called me back. Jiang Rui, do you really think you're some savior? You want to save everyone you meet? What if that person is deeply guilty and backed by power?
I pondered for a while.
Where my power can reach, I will do my best. After that, I didn't see Yen Yunjung again until he led troops to the northern frontier once more. But before leaving, Yen Yunjung used the excuse of urgent northern war affairs to request an imperial decree temporarily transferring the supervision of the Jiangnan salt and iron monopoly to the military department. The fourth prince's officials were instantly sidelined, and their annual revenue plummeted. At the same time, the strategist who had advised the fourth prince during the last incident died mysteriously, tit for tat. Yen Yunjung indeed had a vengeful nature. On the day he set off for the campaign, I was busy with a case and didn't go to see him off. That night, I received a letter from the Moulin Guard. As soon as I opened it, a few words of dissatisfaction came out. Not coming to see me off?
Why? It startled me. Why?
Because your rank isn't high enough, so you can only watch from the city wall. What can you see from there? Better to stay and finish the case at hand. Turning to the second page, the content was much more normal. They wanted me to take care of the Lu family. I was embarrassed. Actually, Lord Lu's official rank was much higher than mine. Besides, was our relationship really one where we could entrust each other during wartime? A black jade bie with a vermilion bird pattern fell out of the letter. A reward. Fine, I reluctantly agreed. During the year Yen Yunjung was on campaign, I solved another case of refugees stealing government grain. But during the investigation, when facing officials of higher rank, my progress was repeatedly hindered. I was even assassinated while searching for key evidence. His Majesty appointed me as an acting imperial censor, granting me the authority to interrogate all officials, investigate all departments, speak frankly and without reservation. The border wars continued year after year, and the front lines consumed massive resources. The government intensified grain levies, causing market grain prices to skyrocket. The theft of grain, both large and small, has been increasing across the various prefectures and counties. Afterward, I submitted a memorial, Military and Civilian Unified Planning, strongly advocating for switching from requisition to purchase and allocating special funds. Many court officials expressed support, but the stubborn old man from the Ministry of Revenue fumed and argued for days. The fourth prince's partisans also took the opportunity to fish in troubled waters. In the end, after weighing both sides and offering reassurances, His Majesty selected the most disaster-stricken. It was first tried in Chiu County on the North Wind Road, and if effective, would be rolled out nationwide. As my official career steadily improved, Shen Xiai was also promoted from Imperial Censor to Senior Censor. On the day of Shen Xi's promotion, I went to congratulate him and secretly asked why, with his increased salary, he didn't move to a larger house. It was absolutely not because I didn't want to be caught by him for a game of chess, but out of concern. His house, like mine, was of the same faction. It leaked whenever it rained, and he came from a distinguished family. Not to mention expecting him to live in a golden house, but at least some elegance like a phoenix perching on a wudong tree should be there. Back when I first left the Shen residence, I had no money, so staying in this shabby house was unavoidable, but why now? Upon hearing this, he generously paid out of his own pocket to jointly repair the roofs of both his courtyard and mine, even supervising the work himself. And he supervised the work for me as well. I gave a dry smile as I watched him bring over the chessboard. While overseeing the work, he waited for me to make a move on the chessboard, unsure of what to say. Thank you, Shendaren. Between you and me, there's no need for thanks. No, I really must. At this, Shen Xiai lowered his head and placed a piece, his voice soft. If you truly want to thank me, then give me more of your time. My breath caught, and my scalp began to tingle. Play chess, he finished his sentence. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the awkward topic was over, because Shen Xiai was indeed not the kind of person to push others. But then, after capturing a group of my black stones, he raised his eyes, a clarity flowing in them, and said earnestly, "Don't always be accompanying others." I told Shen Xiai that my hands were itching to review case files, and seized the chance to flee 2 blocks away. Who on earth said Shen Xiai was an old stick in the mud? Recalling my several entanglements with Shen Xiai, I felt a bit helpless. The maritime transport case involved a mix of interests and imperial authority. It wasn't out of pity for him that I went to save him. As for the Shen family affair, that was my drunken indiscretion, coupled with that damned savior complex flaring up. Little did I know he would take it to heart. I was the one playing the dashing hero, always eager to help the weak and rescue the suffering. It was also my own conceit, thinking myself somewhat learned, that made every word I uttered adorned with romantic allusions. It was my fault. I needed to find a day to make things clear to him. On the path I was about to take, any marriage alliance with a powerful noble family would be nothing but a tie and a shackle to me. On the 36th day after I left through the back gate of the manor, I was cornered. Shen Xiai looked at me, at a loss, a hint of desolation rising in his eyes. "Jiang Rui, you're avoiding me." I let out a dry laugh, my hands not knowing where to rest. Did you read the letter I had Xu Yuan deliver to you?" The letter had politely turned him down. He read it, then burned it. His reply was concise and decisive. I didn't even dare to look up at him. I was afraid that what he wanted to burn was not the letter. "Why didn't you tell me face to face?" His eyes, dark as ink, fixed on me as if he was truly determined to get an answer. "Afraid that I would pester you?" He stepped forward, and I shook my head repeatedly, retreating half a step. "Or is it that you, too, can't bear it?" At this point, he stopped in his tracks, his clear tone trembling slightly at the end. As if expecting me to swallow, I gulped. "What does this have to do with anything?" I shook my head even more vigorously. The person in front of me seemed to plummet in mood. "Then why did you stay up all night in the prison searching for evidence to save me?" Since it had come to this, I could finally explain everything clearly. At that time, multiple forces were intertwined. I paused slightly and still said it aloud. "Shen Xiai, I had to what?" Had to save him. Shen Xiai almost wanted to laugh out loud, yet he calmly said such heartless words. "That night at the Shen residence, why did you come to save me? Why did you speak up for me even when facing hundreds of relatives from the Shen mansion?"
Why?
Was someone forcing you to? His eyes were sharp. I prided myself on being calm, never intimidated by any gaze. But the stubbornness and hurt desperately hidden beneath those dark pupils made my expression falter. I dared not look again, yet I still had to speak the truth.
I
I had been drinking that day, and Yan Yunjing's words provoked me, so I became even more ruthless and straightforward. Even if it had been a male prostitute from the drunken Immortal Pavilion being surrounded that day, I would have helped. Actually, that's not true, but I could only say that for now. When I looked up again, Shen Xiai had calmed down in an eerie way. Perhaps he was driven mad by anger, who knows? He curled the corners of his mouth, a strange beauty like a poppy blooming eerily on ebony. So, the life-saving grace from a few days ago was just a casual favor from Lord Jiang, wasn't it? Even if I were a male entertainer or a courtesan, it would be the same. I was shocked. To compare himself to the male entertainers who received guests and played music at drunken Immortal Pavilion? Shen Xiai was a scion of a prestigious clan, a gentleman who would rather die than betray the rights and laws. To utter such words completely overturned my imagination. No, that's not it. I denied repeatedly, unwilling to let him demean himself, yet feeling it would be unwise to give him false hope. Torn between two difficult choices, I could only say, it's my fault for being careless with my words and leaving affection everywhere I went. No, it's my fault for entertaining wishful thoughts, he said. His eyes finally darkened. He turned and left. In his melancholy, he hadn't gone far when he looked back. Jiang Rui, have you truly never felt the slightest affection for me? I was stunned and didn't dare to answer for a moment. By the time I tried to speak my answer, Shen Xiai had already left. He said he knew, even if I had 3/10 of the world, what did it matter? In this vast world, I wanted too much, and a single moment of light could drown those 3/10. The border conflict in the north had been quelled, but the local tribes were still restless, and the remaining forces were waiting to see which way the wind blew. The court needed to send a pacification commissioner to the northern frontier on behalf of the emperor to take charge and appease the various tribes. The fourth prince recommended a highly respected civil official, Cui Yuji, who was eloquent and had successfully handled local ethnic conflicts many times. The seventh prince recommended a brave and resourceful military strategist, Zhao Polu, who was familiar with the geography and customs of the northern frontier and believed in using both kindness and authority. The court was locked in endless debate over these two candidates, but His Majesty threw the question to me. Faced with this thorny issue, I still spoke frankly, stating that Cui Yuji was better suited for this mission. The seventh prince's faction grew displeased with me. One military official even deliberately blocked my path after the morning court session and insulted me. But how could a mere military officer, if he didn't resort to violence, ever out-argue me? 7 days later, Yan Yunzheng returned triumphant. The emperor held a grand celebration banquet for him, and I stole a chance to have a couple of drinks. Toward the end of the banquet, I slipped away from the crowd to drink alone in a grove of flowers, lazily leaning against a tree, watching the lanterns stretch for miles and the crabapple blossoms blaze like rosy clouds. Suddenly, I heard someone whispering behind me. Craning my neck to look, I saw a couple lost in passion deep within the flower grove. The man, hadn't I seen him at court? Gossip is human nature. I quickly hid myself and stealthily peeked, trying to see more clearly. But a pair of cool hands covered my eyes from behind. Peeking, came a voice, its tone carrying a hint of teasing laughter. He moved closer, and the cool jade earring swayed, gently brushing against my skin. The scent of crabapple blossoms drifted through the air. The couple, swept up in their emotions, let out faint sounds. Frantic with curiosity, I clawed at his hands, desperate for a glimpse. Guess who?
Who am I?
Yan Yunzheng. Let go immediately. The moment I finally got that scoundrel off me, the man and woman were nowhere to be seen. I was both furious and resentful. So, Minister Jiang has such an interest in romantic affairs? The man in front of me smiled, his eyes glinting with mockery. That brought my senses back, and I cleared my throat twice in a feigned, dignified manner. As an imperial censor, it is naturally my duty to oversee the conduct of officials. Yan Yunzheng clearly didn't believe me. He changed the subject. But, Your Highness, why aren't you at the banquet? Why come here to obstruct my official duties? Yan Yunjung raised an eyebrow. I came looking for you, because I have something to discuss. I grew a bit wary. Generally speaking, nothing good ever comes from Yan Yunjung. A lot has changed at court in the year I've been away. There are many things weighing on my mind that I cannot resolve, so I've come to ask for Minister Zhang's advice. First, I heard that Censor Shin confessed his feelings to you and was rejected. I was shocked.
Who said that?
This is a matter that slanders a man's reputation. Your Highness cannot take such rumors lightly. Yan Yunjung naturally didn't believe my nonsense. I was curious. Imperial Censor Shin, a young talent. Why does Minister Zhang like you? Is there someone else in your heart? I shook my head repeatedly. Yan Yunjung gritted his teeth and smiled enigmatically. Or perhaps it's not that he dislikes you? I quickly pressed my forehead. I've had too much wine today, Your Highness. Why do you keep asking questions I can't answer?
I'm Dizzy Kropka.
And with that, I tried to escape under the pretense of sobering up. But Yan Yunjung reached out with his long arm, grabbed my official robe belt, and pulled me back. Let's not talk about personal matters, then let's talk about official business. I heard that when it came to the Pacification Commissioner matter, you almost drove my subordinate into the lake. Cold sweat dripped down my neck. Even military officers liked to tattle. That was a beloved general I personally saved. Yan Yunjung clicked his tongue, a hint of regret in his brows. I swallowed and said, "Well said." Yan Yunjung suddenly burst into laughter. His brows and eyes were full of the glee of a successful prank. This fool always causes me trouble and is best at playing the fool. This time he's finally been honest. I breathed a sigh of relief, but felt that he hadn't come just to talk about this. My eyes darted, and I said, "Your Highness, regarding the Pacification Commissioner matter, indeed Cui Yuji and Zhao Polu are both capable people. However," Yan Yunjung plucked a crabapple petal from my shoulder. "Jiang Rui, you must be fair. I know that. Your Highness is truly wise and mighty. I'm curious, are you afraid that I will vent my anger on you, so you spoke up to explain?" He paused, his eyes deep as an abyss reaching over. Behind him, wind rose, and crabapple petals fell like rain, blurring even his face and expression, leaving only that red jade by his ear blazing with brilliance. It was like a poisoned arrow dipped in tenderness. Whether you live or die depends on how you catch it. Yan Yunjung paused for a moment and added, "Or perhaps you're afraid I'll be heartbroken?" In that instant, I nearly fainted from shock. That day, I was evasive and finally escaped. For several days after, I didn't dare look around carelessly in the court. To my left front was Yan Yunjung, and to my right front was Shin Si. I kept my eyes on my nose and my mind on my heart, utterly still, and I even felt my future beginning to sway slightly. Another year, the third month, I thought Yan Yunjung would vanish for many days as usual. One night, I was reading a newly purchased compendium of strange cases at my desk, deeply absorbed, when I heard the sound of roof tiles being moved overhead. Alert, I grabbed a short blade and went out to check, only to meet eyes with Yan Yunjung, who was sitting on the roof with a sullen expression. He was holding a new roof tile, inspecting it, with several jars of wine beside him. "Your Highness, I'm shocked. How did your roof get replaced?" He showed no shame at being caught on someone's roof, instead turning the question back on me. The one before always leaked. Shin Si had already fixed a new roof for me. Yan Yunjung leaped down, his face not red, his heart not racing, and asked me if I had any wine. "No," I said, but he familiarly dug out a jar from under the peach tree in my yard. With a pang of pain, I watched him drain my treasured wine in one gulp. "Jiang Rui, you're not good to me at all." He seemed drunk, lifting his face, eyes so deep they were frightening, but gritting his teeth to utter that utterly powerless accusation. "Accusation. You, a son of heaven, what use do you have for the goodwill of a lowly fifth-rank official?" But I didn't say that out loud. I dug 2 more jars of wine from the ground and handed them to him. "Your Highness is drunk. Please return to the palace early to rest. These wines are this official's gift to you." "I don't want them," he refused, tugging at my sleeve and leaning close to my face.
Jiang Hui.
"When I went on campaign, did you hope for my return? The whole realm hopes for your Highness." Before the words were finished, they were blocked. The clear wine flowed in through pressed lips and tongues, almost like biting. Retreating half an inch, He advanced half an inch. The strength of a drunk man was terrifyingly great. A scorching hand gripped my waist, refusing to let me retreat any further. Fortunately, I was strong enough to push him back a little. "Your Highness, you are drunk and confused," I said sternly, already growing impatient. He let out a laugh, revealing sharp teeth on both sides like the fangs of a venomous snake. "The realm, the people, the imperial decree, righteousness, Jiang Rui, how do you have so many excuses? I am asking you. What I am asking is whether you worried about me." These words could not be spoken. In the stalemate, Yan Yunzheng was the first to back down. He lowered his head and bit my finger with his sharp teeth, rubbing it dryly. The situation had completely exceeded my control. Finally, I slapped out with my palm and pushed him with force. But unexpectedly, Yan Yunzheng was like a paper butterfly, easily pushed away by me. He was wearing a blue garment today, and after I pushed him, a dark patch quickly appeared and expanded on his chest. My palm was faintly tinged with blood. He was injured, under the influence of alcohol. Yan Yunzheng wasn't actually in much pain, or perhaps he had long grown used to it. Still, he weakly propped himself up on the ground, watching Jiang Rui rush over in panic and shock. He leaned feebly into Jiang Rui's arms, saying he had been wounded in battle, that it hurt terribly. He said that when he was a child, after taking his medicine and unable to sleep, his mother would play the pipa for him. But later, gradually, no one in the capital played the pipa anymore. He had become the one with the finest pipa skills. Jiang Rui stammered that she didn't know how to play the pipa and that she was not a good singer either. Yan Yunzheng gripped her hand tightly and said, "Then read me the case files." By the time Yan Yunzheng finally had his medicine applied and fell into a peaceful sleep, I was drenched in cold sweat. Keeping him here was a mistake. After listening all night to Yan Yunzheng's murmured secrets of the court, even several heads wouldn't be enough to save me. Would Yan Yunzheng kill me to silence me once he wakes up sober? Regret filled me, but I was helpless. Moonlight flowed like water across Yan Yunzheng's sleeping face. I suddenly recalled what Lu Su had said that day when Yan Yunzheng was gravely wounded. Why is heaven always so cruel to him? I abruptly remembered my own days in Chongling. After all, who in this world can live a life free from hardship? According to the records, Consort Qin died in a great fire. She was originally the sworn sister of the former empress, as close as blood. After the former empress entered the palace, Consort Qin followed to serve the emperor. The emperor deeply loved the former empress, but she had been childless for years. The emperor then took Consort Qin as his concubine, and she gave birth to the seventh prince, Yan Yunzheng. The following year, the empress conceived a child but miscarried before 6 months. Both mother and child died. The emperor was grief-stricken. That same year, Consort Qin, following the former empress's bond, set a great fire and perished in it. From the moment the seventh prince was born, the emperor disliked him, perhaps because seeing him reminded the emperor of the former empress. When the seventh prince was 6, an assassination attempt occurred during the emperor's tour. In the chaos, the prince fell from the carriage and was lost among the people. He was escorted back to the capital over 1,000 li by Lord Lu and his family. Yet in Yan Yunzheng's murmurs, Consort Qin was forced to death. Consort Qin was originally from the southern frontier. She followed the former empress because the empress once saved her. However, after the two entered the palace, the former empress remained childless for many years. She earnestly begged Consort Qin to use sorcery to help her conceive. Consort Qin repeatedly advised her, saying the risk was great, but the former empress persisted. Consort Qin had no choice but to reluctantly cast the spell and even sought help from her senior brother, who was then serving as an envoy from the southern frontier outside the palace. The former empress became pregnant, but ultimately died due to her frail health, losing both mother and child. The emperor deeply loved the former empress and redirected his anger toward Consort Qin. At this time, the southern border spy incident stirred up widespread controversy. The southern border envoy was the prime suspect, and it was further discovered that Consort Qin had close ties with the envoy before the empress's death. Consequently, Consort Qin became mired in a whirlpool of public opinion, accused of using dark arts to win favor, causing the empress's death, and colluding with the enemy. The court officials were enraged, especially the Ji clan from Lanling, the empress's maternal family. They resolved to demand that the emperor thoroughly investigate the matter and execute Consort Qin. In truth, not to mention the Yun family, the emperor's own hatred was already overwhelming. He and the former empress had been childhood sweethearts, deeply in love. Within half a month after the empress's death, Consort Qin was forced to end her own life in a fire. However, even after Consort Qin's death, the emperor's hatred remained unabated, and anything related to Consort Qin was strictly forbidden to be mentioned. Yan Yunzheng, as the child left by Consort Qin, was taken by the emperor on an imperial tour at the age of 6. When they encountered an assassination, he was pushed off the carriage by the emperor's own hand. Afterward, if not for the Liu family, Yan Yunzheng would have been in grave danger. If not for his illustrious military achievements on the battlefield, he would have surely died in the cold palace under the emperor's disdain. Yan Yunzheng once begged the nanny who had cared for the former empress since childhood to come forward and confirm that it was the former empress who insisted on using sorcery to improve her health and conceive a child, and that Consort Qin did not intentionally plot harm. That nanny, however, never came forward. If the world were to learn that my lady had used such sinister sorcery, what would become of her pure reputation? So, Consort Qin's life and grievance were exchanged for her lady's good name. That nanny had once held Yan Yunzheng so lovingly when he was a child. Since then, Yan Yunzheng had countless times exchanged his military merits to reopen the case of his mother, to have her interred in the imperial mausoleum, and to have her tomb rebuilt. But after repeated concessions, it remained that the guilty concubine Qin was unforgivable. Under the emperor's calm eyes, even though he had once brought the child of the Yun family, related to the former empress, to be raised by his side like a precious treasure, he had never been given even a sliver of tenderness. In this lifetime, besides his mother, only Jiang Rui had gently cupped his face and told him that it wasn't that he was too delicate to cry out in pain, but that she had come too late. "Jiang Rui, I'm cold," Yan Yunzheng murmured in his dream, his hand unconsciously searching for Jiang Rui. Jiang Rui hesitated for a moment, then covered him with the blanket and turned to leave. When Yan Yunzheng woke up early in the morning, he complained that Jiang Rui hadn't closed the window last night, which gave him a headache, so he demanded that Jiang Rui cook porridge to make it up to him. He hadn't expected the porridge Jiang Rui cooked to be so delicious, nor did he expect that after finishing the porridge, Jiang Rui said to him, "Your Highness, there should still be some distance between a prince and his subjects. Next time, don't come again." In April, during the court's sacrificial ceremony, the 7th prince, due to drunkenness and a detached expression, committed a breach of etiquette and was impeached by the 4th prince's faction. The emperor was furious at the disrespect to the ancestors and harboring resentment, and ordered me to investigate. As an imperial censor, I could wear an expression colder than the ice 3 feet beneath the winter lake under the gaze of the crowd. "Your Highness, before the late emperors and the present sovereign, as a prince, your demeanor is improper and your etiquette is flawed. I dare to ask, do you slight the state's rights or disrespect the ancestral spirits? Are you harboring grief, or are your thoughts elsewhere? Where, in your heart, do loyalty and filial piety reside?" From the censor's perspective and the remonstrating official's stance, it was a flawless conversation. Yan Yunzheng lifted his head abruptly, his eyes cold and dark as he looked at me. Where did loyalty and filial piety exist for him? In this world, besides himself, only she knew why he could not be loyal or filial, yet she still used this doctrine of sovereign and father to attack him. He tried to look into her eyes, to see if there was any hidden helplessness or reluctance, but she was so calm. There was not a trace of emotion in her eyes. She never considered using another argument. She was simply determined to be her perfect, impartial imperial censor. She was the imperial censor, a sharp sword in the emperor's hand, and even if it were to cut him, she would not hesitate. He realized that he had been desperately trying to get too close to her. Clearly, in the past, he had thought she was without fault. The 7th prince had achieved several victories in battle and had already earned the title of God of War among the people. The whole nation celebrated for him. "Your Majesty wishes to reward the 7th prince. Don't tell me this time the request is to allow Consort Qin to be buried in the imperial mausoleum." Your Majesty took a step forward, a smile on his lips but no warmth in his eyes. Yan Yunzheng kowtowed. Your servant this time is willing to exchange all military merits for the chance to reinvestigate that old case. I beg your majesty to allow me to review the sealed archives and interrogate the relevant personnel. Do you know what you are saying? That old case is closed. It was settled by me personally. Are you now using the merits I granted you to slap me in the face? Your majesty was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was as cold as ice. A feud, yet father and son. A court, yet ruler and subject. When the discussion reached its end, the exalted sovereign's eyes were sharp, as if he had calmed down from his earlier anger. You are so filial. If I keep refusing you, would that not chill the hearts of loyal officials and good generals? This time I will give you a chance. And, by the way, I will recommend an excellent assistant for you. Your Majesty urgently summoned me to the palace. My dear subject, the 7th Prince has exchanged all his military merits for the chance to reinvestigate Consort Qin's case. I have thought it over. You are brilliant at solving cases. If you are willing to take this on, the 7th Prince will surely be at ease. My dear subject, are you willing to accept it? I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and knelt down prostrate. Your Majesty, I am willing. But I am incompetent. Your Majesty and the 7th Prince have placed their trust in me. I am overwhelmed with gratitude. His Majesty did not press me further. I heard that day, the 7th Prince walked out of the hall in a daze. His Majesty granted him many rewards, but could not give him what he truly wanted. After the rewards, His Majesty took the opportunity to take back the tiger tally from the 7th Prince. That day, I encountered danger on the street. In the panic, a man in black appeared and saved me. I recognized the insignia of the Moulin Guard on him. It was that day I learned that the blackbird-patterned red jade by that Yan Yunjie gave me before he left for the campaign was a token that could summon some shadow guards of the Moulin Guard to protect me, second only to Yan Yunjie himself. There was only one such piece in the world. Feeling ashamed, I returned the jade by to its rightful owner. Yan Yunjie stood high on the pavilion, looking down from above. Jiang Rui, if I take it back, I will never give it out again. I am terrified. I dare not accept it. Before I left, Yan Yunjie flew down, grabbed my neck, and pressed me against a rockery. His eyes churned with darkness like a bottomless abyss. Jiang Rui, you know clearly that he and my mother. I knew. I held his arm, my gaze not flinching, but I could not. The path I walk, the only path I can walk, was guided by His Majesty. Hypocritical father and son? He personally promoted me subject to sovereign. I am His Majesty's blade, driven only by His Majesty's command. So, Jiang Rui, no matter what, you have never been willing to lean toward me, even a little. The day I left Prince Yan Yunjing's manor, it began to drizzle. Yan Yunjing said, Jiang Rui, once I take back this jade disc, I will no longer be soft-hearted toward you. A misstep, and here we are in the end. In the court, the forces of the 7th Prince and the 4th Prince grew increasingly confrontational. In recent years, droughts had frequently struck Songjuan County in the southwest, bandits roamed rampant, and the people struggled to survive. The 4th Prince seized on the disaster to vehemently argue that the 7th Prince's post-war rewards were excessive, draining the national treasury. The 7th Prince, unhurried, attributed the power of bestowing rewards solely to the emperor's judgment, and further clarified the treasury's abundance. It lay in using people to their fullest. His cold gaze swept over me. To relieve disasters and pacify the people, what was needed were capable officials who sought no empty fame. Yet the officials to be sent for disaster relief had still not been decided. Just then, the case I had been investigating unexpectedly implicated several imperial clansmen and descendants of meritorious officials. The 4th Prince's faction, joined by the angered imperial relatives and nobles, launched a fierce impeachment against me, accusing me of acting harshly, disrupting the court's order, and alienating the imperial family. To appease the public outcry, His Majesty had no choice but to punish me. At that moment, the 7th Prince suggested that I be sent out for training to handle the drought and bandits in Songjuan County. His Majesty agreed. If I succeeded, it would count as atonement. If I failed, it would be a capital offense. After enduring hardships and advancing step by step, I was finally within reach of stepping into the center of power in the capital. But now, a single memorial and a vast scheme have turned everything to dust. Fortunately, at this time, the Women's Recommendation Bureau had taken its initial shape. Yan Yunzheng fulfilled his promise to me and brought my teacher from Chongling to work at the bureau. It was said that when he found her, her in-laws were scolding her, but her husband stood in front of her to plead her case. When Yan Yunzheng sought her out, he spent considerable effort extricating her from both her in-laws and her own family. Her husband begged bitterly, but as the teacher walked out the door, she didn't look back. That marriage was like a kidnapping, an accomplice that had buried her way forward. Before she was seized from school and forced into marriage, she had gripped my hand tightly and told me I must get out. Now it is I who sits in the carriage heading west, holding her hand, promising her tear-streaked face that I will return. I will surely return. On the day of departure, Lu Su came to see me off with tears in his eyes. I was wrong. He is a demon. I will never see him again. I hate him. She resolved to ignore Yan Yunzheng no more. I smiled and wiped her tears. Shen Xiai stood quietly at the end of the procession, waiting until everyone had left before walking over. I'll be here waiting for you. He looked very calm, as if he trusted that I would indeed return. But just as he was about to leave, he grabbed the frame of my carriage, veins trembling on his hand. His jet-black eyes gazed deeply into mine. If I can't help but come find you, could you please not drive me away again? Because by then, it will surely mean I've been waiting for far too long.
I'm sorry, Kropka.
Realizing his lapse, he seemed to wake from a dream and wanted to flee. I gently held his hand. Just as the carriage was about to exit the city gates, I felt someone had hidden a dog under my cushion. When there were many people, it wasn't noticeable, but now that it's quiet, the heavily concealed breathing sound became more obvious. I reached under the seat and pulled out a Lu Ji. Lu Ji, I really need to consider sticking a few needles into your forehead. No work at the Dali Temple today? Lu Ji was caught red-handed, with a small bundle on his back. I've already left a letter for my father to help me request leave and resign. He was proud of his meticulous plan. I'm going with you to Songchuan County. After I kicked him off, he chased the carriage with tearful eyes. I sighed, stopped the carriage, reached out a hand from the window, and gently rubbed his head. All right, I promise you. Come back to see you soon. Until then, wait here. After comforting everyone, the carriage left the city gate. I had a feeling and leaned out the window to look back. On the city wall, a black shadow flashed by. Songchuan County had suffered years of disasters, 1,000 miles of barren land, corpses lining the roads, empty government granaries, and fierce bandits entrenched in the mountains. The local officials, faced with me, a young female imperial envoy from the capital, showed outward respect but secretly mocked me as a disgraced official, colluding with local magnates and bandits behind my back. They anticipated I would cause chaos. It was more complicated than any case I had ever faced. Walking on the streets, the common folk even threw stones at me, and I faced several assassination attempts in that place, though luckily I didn't lose any limbs. For over a year and a half, I barely had time to sleep, relying on a few elite officials I had managed to gather through the process of elimination to set up my strategy. I used myself as bait to draw out the core henchmen of the bandit leader, nearly getting slashed to death while taking such risks, then used bandits to control bandits. I took useful bandits under my command. In the early days, with no money or supplies, I relied on the credibility I earned from cracking down on bandits, essentially pulling off a trick with empty hands. I leveraged my identity as the Imperial Inspector as credit backing, issuing work relief certificates to encourage the people to participate in water conservancy and land reclamation projects. These certificates could be exchanged for grain. It could also be used to offset future taxes. I then devised a scheme to break the local powerful merchants who were hoarding goods, issuing a decree. For every 100 dan of grain donated, 1 merit record would be granted in exchange for a work relief certificate. A certain number of such certificates would entitle the holder to priority water rights for the newly built canals and official salt permits. Soon, the work relief certificate became a temporary currency with purchasing power, revitalizing the entire economy of Songchuan County. After another 6 months of searching for water sources, digging wells, and promoting cold-resistant new crops, Songchuan County was finally transformed. In the 3rd year, when the peach blossoms bloomed, I left Songchuan County to return to the capital and report on my mission. The people lined the streets to see me off, reluctant to part. On the way back to the capital, I encountered an unprecedented assassination attempt. The female official Jiang Rui, who had been sent to relieve the disaster in Songchuan County, had outstanding achievements. Unfortunately, heaven was jealous of her talents. She died from assassination in the 36th year of Tianyuan. The people mourned, and the court and society were shocked. Du Yushi Shenxi took a 1-month leave and stayed long by the grave of the female official Jiang Rui. Lu Su, the younger daughter of the Lu family, who was a close friend of Jiang Rui, fell seriously ill upon hearing this news. Lu Ji, the eldest son of the Lu family, ignoring his father's objections, gathered the former officials of the Dali Temple who had served under Jiang Rui and personally made a trip to the northwest, but found nothing. That same year, the 7th prince fell ill with a heart ailment. The young master of the Lanling Ji family, originally sent into exile in a distant land due to a head condition, and also the nephew of the late empress, stormed up to the capital. His Majesty, who hadn't seen him for years, was overjoyed. But the young master refused to see His Majesty. Instead, he led troops to surround Jiang Rui's grave, forbidding anyone from approaching. The road from the northwest to the capital was scoured back and forth by the young master dozens of times. Far away on the southern border, I naturally knew nothing of these matters. His Majesty had arranged for me to fake my death and take the opportunity to go south to uncover evidence of the Jingnan King's planned rebellion. The most trusted advisor under the Jingnan King, whose family had died tragically, turned coat and betrayed him, demanding that I reach the southern border within 10 days and come in secret. I had just died and immediately rushed over, secretly following the Jingnan King's convoy that was covertly transporting iron ore. I discovered his hidden arsenal beneath the hunting grounds, with a number of weapons far exceeding the regulations for a prince. Taking a risk, I stole a shield engraved with the prince's mansion insignia as evidence. On my way back to the capital to report, for safety's sake, I avoided the official roads, disguised myself as a merchant, traveled day and night, and delivered the evidence directly to the emperor. While returning to the capital bearing 2 monumental achievements, I thought I had finally weathered the storm, a future so bright it nearly blinded me. But little did I expect that with my official position secured, an even greater crisis awaited. This time, my achievements in the south were so great that His Majesty was exceedingly pleased, and no one in the court could question my promotion. In the imperial study, the emperor was silent for a moment. He said slowly, "We remember that when you first entered the court, you vowed to be a sword drawn only for the state. Now it seems you have fulfilled that vow. It is your Majesty's favor that has given your subject the opportunity to gain experience." The emperor smiled, but his gaze sharpened. "My loyal minister, have you ever resented us?" The emperor referred to the series of conflicts concerning the 7th prince. If one were to say it was the 4th prince or Yan Yunzheng who harmed him, it would be more accurate to say it was the emperor's doing to balance power, using me as his instrument. We knew full well that the 7th prince was close to you, yet we had you turn your spear against him several times, and sent you to a scorching land 1,000 li away. I immediately kowtowed to express loyalty. Your Majesty has shown your subject the grace of promotion and the honor of appreciation. As Li He of the ancient Tang dynasty wrote, "I would wield the jade dragon for my lord and die, to repay the golden terrace's intent." Your subject's entire life holds no other intention. Right then, the emperor looked at me for a long moment and suddenly smiled. "I know your loyalty. Now rise." He raised his hand, but his expression suddenly turned kind, which made me uneasy. "I recall that you, my beloved minister, are not yet married." My eyebrows twitched. I braced myself and replied, "Yes, but I have resolved to dedicate my life to the service of the nation." Alas, the nation is the nation, but personal happiness must also be seized. The emperor waved his hand, seeing through my perfunctory response. He even looked at me with a gossipy expression. "I have heard that Censor-in-Chief Shun is deeply infatuated with you, and that unruly 7th son of mine seems quite interested in you as well. Just after I summoned you to the palace, he came uninvited and is waiting outside the hall." The emperor gently lifted his chin. I stiffly turned my head. Outside the imperial study, a familiar figure stood in the courtyard awaiting summons. "Your Majesty, the 7th prince may have other important matters." Cold sweat beaded on my forehead. The emperor chuckled. but did not expose me. Do you know, my beloved minister, that I have a beloved nephew? I wiped the cold sweat, relieved that the emperor had finally changed the subject. It was about the young master of the Lanling Ji family. Well, he has been frail since childhood, and the former empress had no children for many years. The emperor took pity on him and raised him personally in his early years. As the emperor spoke, he seemed to sink into a fond memory. At that time, the former empress was still alive, and together they raised that delicate, jade-like child who looked so much like her. Suddenly, the emperor let out a soft sigh. Unfortunately, the child was born weak. I searched for the best physicians across the land for her, but to no avail. In the end, I had to follow the child's wishes and let her leave the capital to seek healing in a quiet place. I listened patiently, but had no idea what any of this had to do with me. Now the child has finally had a change of heart and returned to the capital to see me. I clasped my hands and said, "Congratulations, Your Majesty." But then the emperor abruptly changed the subject. He asked sternly, "Minister, I ask you again, is there someone you hold dear in your heart? Are you betrothed or married?" I shook my head repeatedly. From behind the screen in the imperial study, there seemed to be the sound of something falling. The emperor suddenly revealed a subtle smile, looking quite gloating. "Minister, the former empress's nephew has accused you before me of abandoning your husband and child. Such a thing actually happened in this world. After being used by me and ruthlessly abandoned in Chongling, Yun Jian transformed into the late empress's nephew, that Ji Yun Jian whom His Majesty had raised from childhood and favored even more than the fourth prince and others." My vision blurred before my eyes. That day, a furious noble youth emerged from behind the screen, directly binding Director of Revenue Jiang Rui back to his mansion in the capital. It couldn't exactly be called binding. I knew I was in the wrong. Yun Jian was furious. While he tied a silk ribbon around my hand, I still cared enough to tell him not to get angry, or else he wouldn't be pretty anymore. I meant to soothe him, like petting a cat, but who knew he would let out a cold laugh and retort, "Then who is pretty?
Shenchi?
Or Yan Yunzheng?" I was instantly at a loss for words. I sat obediently on the chair as Yun Jian interrogated me. "Not married yet? Then what about what you said earlier about a stable official position and later marrying me? Didn't you tell me you came to the capital to become an official?" He slammed his hand onto the desk, onto the portrait of Shin Si. "Who is this? He died, and he's still guarding your grave for you. What? Are you leaving the role of widower for him to play?" I could almost hear the grinding of his teeth. Just as I was about to explain, he slammed his hand again, this time onto the portrait of Lu Ji. "And this one? The fool from the Lu family had a big fight with me a couple of days ago, saying you treated him with exceptional care and tolerance, and that you told him to wait for you in the capital. Is that true? You told him to wait. What are you planning to do?" Step by step, I'm closing in. I have no doubt that if Yunji had a knife in his hand right now, he would cut open my heart and lay it bare. Lu Ji is my peer, my subordinate. Under Yun Jian's murderous gaze, I gradually lowered my voice. "And that mad dog, you dared to provoke him too?" Now it was Yan Yunjing's turn. "This I can explain. I have no..." Suddenly, I thought of that kiss under the tree in the courtyard 3 years ago, and Yun Jian noticed my pause. Sensing my hesitation and guilt keenly, his expression changed abruptly. "You and him, how?" His fair, well-defined hand gripped my neck, forcing me to look up at him. He stared intently into my eyes, as if searching for the answer. "Since you cruelly abandoned me, used me as a stepping stone to climb up, you should know that among these people, the last person you should have ever gotten involved with is him. I know. You love him less than you love me." Yun Jian asked fiercely, "Do you love him?" "No," I answered without hesitation. "Then what about me?" I couldn't answer, because it was hard to. The person before me was clinging to a breath of resentment, clutching at the verbally acknowledged identity as a protective layer. He was the rightful husband, the first adorned with jewels. He should have been the proudest young master of the imperial family, but he stubbornly persisted, forcing me to give an answer, like a male ghost about to dissipate, or like a pristine jade bottle about to shatter. I remained silent, couldn't bear it. A cold kiss pressed on, biting the lip, letting blood seep in. "How did you deceive me back then, huh?" Between turning lips and tongues, You murmured accusations against me, saying you would love only me for a lifetime, saying you would never leave me. You went to the capital, and aside from sending gold, silver, and jade via escort agency, you weren't even willing to write a letter to coax me. You said where the money is, there is love, deceiving me year after year. If it weren't for your fake death this time, I would have come to the capital to find you. Are you never coming back? I didn't answer.
I'm not sure, I said.
Yun Jian saw my hesitation and sneered. Jiang Rui, you're all sweet talk, cold-hearted, and utterly wicked. I said nothing, sitting still, letting him suck blood from my lips. The hand on my neck loosened slightly, revealing a flicker of uncertainty. My heart stirred. I reached out and stroked the back of his neck. Yun Jian's eyes flew open, the hatred he had barely mustered scattering in an instant. Don't lie to me again. When Lu Su told me that Shen Xiai was going to marry the eldest daughter of the Taisher family, I tilted my teacup slightly. That's a happy event, I said with a smile. Lu Su grabbed my hand and said, You know he doesn't want to. He's hoping you'll go to him, Su'er. I'm a newly appointed official now. I don't want to offend the Taisher family, nor do I want to hurt another woman. Lu Su stamped her foot in frustration. You're not the type to fear death or chase fame and profit. I shook my head, looking into Lu Su's water-like eyes. I am. Lu Su saw that I was unmoved by anything she said.
He grew annoyed too.
After all, I had learned that Miss Taisher also had a sweetheart of her own. They were being forced into a match by their elders. On the third day of the third month, they were to meet at Tianxiang Restaurant. That day, the usually lively restaurant was cleared of all other guests. Shen Xiai and Lian Shi both felt something was off. They sat across from each other, yet remained silent. One was bent on taking a gamble, the other, with someone far away in her heart, sought a turning point. As the sun set behind the western hills, there was no longer any reason to stay seated. Lian Shi watched as the man before her, whose face was calm and cold, gradually showed signs of dejection. He had waited for 3 hours, sent many people to make discreet inquiries, and finally received an answer he had known all along but refused to admit. Miss Lian Shi, I will help you with the matter involving Brother Qin. He can reach the capital within 5 days. Lian Shi nodded in thanks. As she saw him brace himself against the table and stand up to leave, at that very moment, a young lady burst in with great fanfare, losing all calm and composure, like a greenhorn. She bowed apologetically to Lian Shi, saying she owed her a favor, and if she ever needed anything, she should just send word to the Jiang residents, and they would do their utmost to help. After the girl pulled the dazed Shen Xiai far away and arranged for Lian Shi to be escorted back, Lian Shi finally remembered who she was, the young, iron-willed Vice Minister of Revenue. Her father had once said that this man had clawed his way up from the bottom, with unfathomable cunning and tactics. That she had so easily obtained his promise meant she and Qin Lang were saved. That day, Xu Xian watched as his master, who was so stingy he patched his own boots, spent a fortune to book the entire Tianxiang Tower for a day. From daylight until dusk, he finally rushed in on a whim. She had long prepared thoroughly, clearing the venue beforehand to avoid tarnishing the girl's reputation. In the third month, when blossoms filled the city and drizzle fell endlessly, I met Yan Yunzheng again. Why did you send someone to deliver the Qinshao flowers yesterday? I picked them on a whim while passing through the southern border. Yan Yunzheng replied bluntly, seeing through my lie. Qinshao flowers grow on sheer cliffs. You say you picked them on a whim? On the anniversary of Imperial Consort Qin's death, you always seem sorrowful. Lu Su said you often go days without food or water. I paused. I hope you can find some comfort. Yan Yunzheng sneered. Would you even care if I went without food or water? I caused you to go to Tsongchuan, nearly reducing your achievements to dust, and even causing your death. Don't you hate me? I shook my head. Since I chose this path, the wind and rain, the blades and spears are all inherent in this path I chose. If not you, then someone else. Besides, I can handle it. Yan Yunzheng seemed provoked and cornered me under the eaves. Jiang Rui, why are you always so confident? He grabbed my neck, eyes dangerously narrowed. Does being demoted 1,000 li mean nothing to you? Then what if I really kill you? Will that make you beg me? I calmly met his dark eyes. Do you truly want me dead? Wouldn't you be sad? When I faked my death, the one who turned Songchuan County and the road back to the capital upside down was not only Ji Yunjian. The seventh prince had no food or drink. Illness struck like a mountain falling. The imperial physicians were at a loss, finally diagnosing it as a heart ailment. It was suffocating, but it was a kiss, a violent kiss that nearly crushed and devoured me. For an instant, Yan Yunjing wished he could reach into Jiang Rui's chest and turn it upside down, even scrutinizing the smallest part to see if there was any trace of himself. You snatched Shen Xi away from the wedding, couldn't bear to see Ji Yunjian sad, didn't want Lu Ji to grieve. But what about me? Have I never meant anything to you? Under the emperor's sovereign power, beneath the interests of official positions, you refuse to choose me. But now, even among these people, you won't lean toward me even a little. He gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with a bone-deep hatred. Then, Your Highness, why are you so insistent on my allegiance? I am but a mere insignificant being. I stared at him calmly. At that moment, Yan Yunjing felt that there could be no one worse than Jiang Rui in this world. She fixed him with those eyes, so composed they seemed to see through his soul. Yan Yunjing was certain. She knew everything. She even cruelly turned around and was about to leave. When he panicked and finally caught up, he only realized she had merely bought an umbrella by the roadside. She was teasing him again, just as he had teased her countless times before. But in the past, they were evenly matched. Now, I admit, he paused for a moment. I love you. Without you, I will fall ill, I will die. I have lost to you completely. Is that enough? Can this be enough? He grasped the handle of the umbrella, covering her hand. Now, can you love me? A few days later, His Majesty fell seriously ill. After recovering, he summoned me to the palace and asked me about matters concerning the heir to the throne. I dare not presume to comment, but if your Majesty wishes to make a decision, you must first remove the thorn in your side. The emperor narrowed his eyes. What do you mean by that, my minister? The emperor had inquired about the seventh prince's marriage and tacitly allowed me to bring the Qinxia flower to the seventh prince the day before. Times have changed. Does your Majesty truly still hold a grudge against the seventh prince? Your Majesty, the young prince is innocent. The emperor then ordered a reinvestigation into the truth of Consort Qin's case, demanding the matter be fully uncovered. One day, I took a break from my busy schedule and slipped out of my residence to attend a flower-viewing banquet hosted by the daughter of the Minister of Rites. Surrounded by the songs of birds and the fragrance of flowers, with graceful beauties in attendance, even just sitting in the courtyard admiring the blooms and sipping tea was a delight. Several young ladies who had taken the imperial exams this year gathered around me, seeking my advice on policy essays. But at that moment, the emperor summoned me to the palace. My dear minister, how are things with your marriage? Surely you don't intend to make my Qian a concubine, do you? Seeing the dangerous look in the emperor's eyes, I immediately shook my head. Then you wish to make Lao Qi a concubine? How could you bear to make Lao Qi a concubine? It is your Majesty who cannot bear it. Ever since the misunderstanding between your Majesty and Yan Yunjing was resolved a few days ago, you have felt deeply guilty toward him. As he spoke, the emperor himself also frowned. Shen Xi's temperament was too strong, so that wouldn't work either. Lu Ji's son might be acceptable. I wiped the cold sweat from my brow. Your Majesty, Lord Lu has a close friendship with you. The emperor also showed reluctance. Yes, that old man treasures his son and daughter most dearly. If I made his son a secondary spouse, he would surely storm into the palace to fight me over it. With this in mind, the emperor waved his hand decisively. Are you asking me to calculate this for you? This is your own affair. Go settle it yourselves. In the 40th year of Tianyuan, the emperor passed away. The ninth prince, though young, already showed signs of a wise ruler, and several capable ministers served as regents. The fourth prince was enfeoffed to his fief. The emperor posthumously appointed the seventh prince as Duke of Anghua. According to historical records, Jiang Rui was a native of Chongling in Jiangnan. In the 33rd year of Tianyuan, he achieved the title of Tanhua, third place in the imperial examination, and was initially appointed as a compiler in the Hanlin Academy. Later, he solved numerous major cases with extraordinary brilliance and was promoted to chief of the Dalasai and concurrently served as imperial censor. Subsequently, when Songchuan suffered a drought, bandits ran rampant, and the people were destitute. the emperor dispatched him there. 2 years later, Songchuan County transformed from a land of starvation to one where officials were upright and the people were at peace. Not long after, Jiang Rui received the imperial order. She faked her death to enter the tiger's den, investigated the case of Prince Jingnan's rebellion, obtained irrefutable evidence, and returned. The emperor, pleased with her merits and talents, promoted her to vice minister of revenue. Later, she was appointed as female chancellor, pioneering the first female chancellor. She was upright, flawless in strategy, and a capable administrator of the state. Later, whenever Chancellor Jiang Rui was mentioned, people often recalled her contributions to children's education, the imperial examinations, and their official careers. She inherited the Women's Recommendation Bureau left by her predecessors and expanded it. During her time in office, the number of officials in the Recommendation Bureau reached over 100, and at its peak, the number of officials from the 6 ministries exceeded 200. Historical records say Chancellor Jiang was charismatic, with countless main and side husbands in her residence, including the Ji family of Lanling and the Shun family of the capital, the Liu family, and also the Duke of Anghua, who insisted on an imperial decree for marriage. Unofficial history records that Chancellor Jiang worked diligently from dawn to dusk in her early years, but in her later years she became addicted to pleasure. And there were instances where she stayed at Nanfeng Biyuan and Zuixinlu for days, without returning home. Unofficial history also records that later, Lu Su, who became an official and served as vice minister of the Ministry of Rights, secretly loved Chancellor Jiang. However, because this unofficial history was too wild, he chose to burn it. There were also discussions about the jealousy and conflicts among the concubines in Jiang Rui's harem. Even now, there are still debates over which historical records Jiang Rui loved most. In the annals, Jiang Rui rose to the highest position, with achievements as numerous as clouds. As for the unfavorable speculations and salacious rumors, they are merely a few sparse annotations beneath. That girl who gnawed on grass when hungry at the imperial mausoleum, who was beaten bloody in the streets for refusing to be a slave, step by step, finally reached the pinnacle of power.